Opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good almost afternoon, Britain. It's 3 minutes to 12. My name's Tom Harwood, and it's the 3rd of April.
And I'm Emily Carver.
There we go.
If you'd forgotten.
Well, we're with you, of course, for the next 3 hours. But let's go straight to the House of Commons now. The Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds,
defend the
is
UK's
speaking about
domestic
tariffs.
industries from the direct and indirect impacts of US tariffs in a way which is both measured and proportionate, while respecting the rules-based international trading system. As the world continues to change around us, British workers and businesses can be assured of one constant, and that this is a government that will not be set off course in choppy waters. So the final part of our approach will be to turbo boost the work this government is doing to make our economy stronger and more secure, including our new industrial strategy. And we will strike trade deals with our partners and work closely with our allies for our shared prosperity. We have a clear destination to deliver that economic security for working people. We're progressing a deal that can do that. We're laying the foundations to move quickly, should it not. And we're ensuring British business have a clear voice in what happens next. And I commend this statement to the House.
For the Shadow Secretary of State, Andrew Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for advance sight of his statement. Businesses, workers and their families woke up this morning with greater fear and more uncertainty about their future. Tariffs makes us all poorer by pushing up costs, suppressing demand and making the pound in our pocket buy less of the things that we need. It's free trade to which we owe our past prosperity, and free trade which has lifted billions out of poverty since the Second World War. So this is a moment for calm words and cool heads, and we will support the government when it does sensible things to reverse the impact on our already fragile economy. I'm glad the government has recommitted to reaching a deal with our closest ally and largest single country trading partner. But this is also a moment for honesty and telling the truth. The government sadly got no special favours from the White House last night. The Secretary of State refers to vindication. This is no vindication at all. We're in precisely the same band as the Congo, Costa Rica, Kosovo and the Christmas Islands. In fact, I count over 125 countries and territories that have the same tariff levels as the US as we now do. So not that special. Our automotive manufacturers face unchanged tariffs of 25% on around £8 billion worth of cars and auto part exports. Steel and aluminium exports remain at 25%. And on a volume-weighted basis, our exports face an average tariff of closer to 13%. Above all, last night was a vindication of those who were pilloried and abused for wanting our country to have the freedom to decide our own trade policy. If Labour and the Liberal Democrats had their way, we'd still be in the EU. As the Prime Minister acknowledged this morning, thousands of British jobs have been saved today as the result. And I hope the Right Honourable Gentleman and his colleagues had the decency to regret the 48 times they voted to stay in Europe and to thank us for getting Brexit done. Madam Deputy Speaker, last week, the OBR warned that these tariffs could knock up to 1% off GDP. We're already in a per capita recession and markets are falling this morning. It's businesses that create jobs and grow our economy. Yet at every turn, the government has piled on headwinds when they need our support. They've put a tax on jobs, more than doubled business rates for many, introduced the family business death tax and are barrelling ahead with flawed recycling charges. No wonder business confidence remains at rock bottom. To help British exporters survive, they must urgently tackle our sky-high energy costs. A business in Birmingham, the West Midlands, faces energy costs 4 times their competitor in Birmingham, Alabama, in the US. That dwarfs the impact of tariffs and is no basis on which to compete. The Secretary of State himself is responsible for the Employment Rights Bill. It'll hit businesses so hard, the OBR has not even begun to assess how much it will hurt the economy. So now is the time, today is the day. In the national interest, the Secretary of State must walk back to his department and instruct his officials, shelve the Employment Rights Bill today. Put ideology aside, put the unions on hold and put the government on the side of British business. The cost of failure is too high. The burdens on business are too great. Time is too precious. He must act and act fast. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me conclude with some questions to the Secretary of State on behalf of all of our constituents. Will he publish an urgent assessment of the impact of today's tariffs on the UK economy so markets can see whether the Chancellor's emergency budget sums still add up or she'll be back for more taxes? When will he give the car makers the clarity they need on the ZEV mandate? Will he undertake to keep Parliament informed and to publish the UK's broader objectives, not negotiating strategy, but the broader objectives in these trade negotiations with the US, precisely as the previous government did in March 2020? Will he assure us that any deal will back British farmers and food producers and uphold our high environmental protection and the animal welfare standards which we ourselves enhanced since leaving the EU and upheld in the agreements we reached? Will he now surge additional resources for exporters, reallocating resources across government to fund a new version of the UK trade show programme and enlarging the GREAT campaign? What consideration is the government giving to the special situation of Northern Ireland? Will he guarantee that all claims under the duty reimbursement scheme for Northern Ireland will be paid promptly and the government will commit additional resources when required? Can he reassure us that in the event the UK did see a major trade distortion in Northern Ireland, the government would be prepared, if necessary, to trigger Article 16 of the Windsor Framework? Will he reassure the House that any concessions to UK tech giants on the digital services tax won't simply shift the burden to the United Kingdom small businesses? Madam Deputy Speaker, on this side of the House, We are on the side of business and on the side of Britain. We understand the gravity of this situation. We will support the government where it acts in the national interests. I hope they will take this moment seriously, get back round the table with their US counterparts and involve the House in their deliberations.
Secretary of State Jonathan Reynolds.
Well, I thank the Shadow Minister for his statement and his tone in responding, and I recognise that his commitment to free trade and the case he has made for that, which I believe is one that we broadly share. He asks for honesty. I think that is always good in Parliament. He's a little bit flippant about the position that we find ourselves in today. He mentions a series of countries, Christmas Islands, Kosovo, who don't have the kind of complex trading relationships we have with the United States. I would just say to him, he can see in my tone and my presentation and my words today, there's disappointment from me that we are in this position, but I do look at the EU, which faces a tariff of 20%, Japan 24%, India 26%. I look at the 25% tariffs already in place, and Canada and Mexico. So yes, we're in a more favourable position compared to those key friends and allies, but we must go further, particularly in relation to the tariffs on automotive, which is a particular concern for me. He brings up Brexit again. I would say perhaps not the finest hour in terms of the state's preparation for large trade shocks in the Conservative Party, but let's pass that over. Of course, as the President of the Board of Trade, I am of the view that it's good that we can set our own trade policy. But I would just say to him, and I would mean this to all colleagues, isn't it time to try and unite the country about the future, rather than always harbour back to the past? Isn't that the way we will all find our way through that? And I just think that half the...
OK, well, we're going to head live to the East Midlands now because the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, and the Prime Minister are launching their local election campaign.
MPs and members, every one of you dedicated to serving the communities that you represent. 9 months ago, the Conservatives were given the marching orders by the British public, who saw right through them, saw their legacy for what it is: shattered council finances, potholed streets, public services brought to their knees, and communities left behind. Well, I say no more. Last July, Britain voted for change, and it was a turning point for our country. It was an opportunity to make sure that communities right across the UK felt the benefit of a transformative Labour team in office and unlock our country's full potential. And that's what our Labour government has been doing through our plan for change nationally. And today is why I'm so pleased to be here in Bolsover as we launch our campaign to bring change to Britain through local government and our mayors. As I met people in towns and cities across the country, the yearning for change has been clear for all too long. So much important work has begun. We know cleaning up the Tories' mess will take time, and it'll be hard graft. We need the determination to deliver it, and it has to be fought for. That is why we need great Labour mayors, leaders and councillors delivering the change across our great towns, cities and counties, so that we can transform the lives of people at a local level. And we all know what a difference Labour empowering the town halls and civic centres can make. From putting buses back into public control, to turbocharging house building and delivering growth that transforms the lives of people and communities the length and breadth of Great Britain. That is what Labour offers on May the 1st. And I know our great Labour team will be working hard across the country, from Lancashire in the north of England to councils across the south, to deliver that. Our fantastic mayoral candidates will be at the heart of this. Margaret Pinder in Hull and East Yorkshire, Anna Smith for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, Jason Stockwood for Greater Lincolnshire, Helen Godwin for the west of England, and Ross Jones, who has worked so hard for Doncaster for the last 12 years. With a Labour government in Westminster and Labour mayors across the country, they will get the very best for their combined authority or city, because that is what we offer, a team. From the Prime Minister Keir Starmer and myself, to our mayors and local leaders, all fully focused on the change that our country needs. We're just getting started, and we're all ready turning the page of 14 years of chaos and decline. We all saw what Tory failure meant. The toll on our roads, on our high streets, on social care, and the betrayal of levelling up. Labour is turning the page. With £5 billion of new funding for local services, a record £1.6 billion to fix our local roads, and new powers for our brilliant local leaders to drive the change. On the 1st of May, people across this country have the opportunity to bring change to their local communities and make sure the Conservative councils who have let public services crumble and our streets filled with potholes are held to account. By electing Labour councillors and Labour mayors, we can work together to make sure that our plan for change is delivered right across the country with local people at its heart. That's why we must bring change to our local areas. And it's why it gives me great pleasure to introduce Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister and the leader of the Labour Party, to speak to us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ansa. What a brilliant Deputy Prime Minister she's proving to be. Thank you, Ellie, for leading this campaign. And thank you to all of you for such a warm welcome. It's brilliant to see you all in this room today. And fantastic, as others have said, to be here in Derbyshire. What a beautiful place and what a beautiful day it is. And it hardly seems possible, but if you can believe it, this weekend, this coming weekend, is 9 months since the general election. 9 months since the entire nation voted overwhelmingly for change. Since I stood on the steps of Downing Street, I think the day after the election, and promised that this Labour government would be on the side of working people. And mark my words, with our plan for change, we are turning things around and getting our country back on track. But look, I know people are still struggling with the cost of living. You know that. You see it every day. But the difference between us the last 9 months and 14 years of a Tory government, the difference, it's night and day. They spent £700 million of taxpayer money to deport 4 volunteers to Rwanda. We've returned more than 24,000 people with no right to be here. That's the highest rate for nearly a decade. They crashed the economy and sent interest rates through the roof. We've laid the ground for 3 interest rate cuts. They said the minimum wage. What did they say? They said it was a burden. We know the difference it makes to millions of people. And that's why I was really pleased earlier this week to announce the increase in the national living wage by £1,400. That's a pay rise for millions of the lowest paid workers in our country. More money in the pockets of working people. They let the NHS waiting lists hit record highs. And they stood back while strikes crippled our health service. We've cut waiting lists by 200,000. At the election 9 months ago, we promised 2 million extra NHS appointments in the first year of a Labour government, and we delivered that in 7 months. That's a promise made and a promise delivered. And because this government got around the table, because we ended the strikes within 4 weeks, because we put doctors back on the front line, not the picket line, we saved 500,000 NHS appointments. That's the change that Labour makes. Fuel duty, cut. That's the change that Labour makes. Wages rising faster than prices. That's the change that Labour makes. Ending fire and rehire. Scrapping unfair 0 hours contracts. Strengthening maternity rights. making work pay, the biggest levelling up of workers' rights in a generation. That's the change that Labour makes. And that's our plan for change in action. It's beginning to bear fruit across the country. But still, in local communities, tired Tory councils are still putting on the blockers, not understanding that people expect their politicians to deliver for them. They're holding Britain back. Look at the evidence. Higher council bills with the Tories. That's a fact. This Tory council here in Derbyshire, responsible for roads that are plagued by potholes. This Tory council responsible for antisocial behaviour that is rife. They still haven't got the message. Britain wants change. So if you want change in Derbyshire, then on May the 1st, vote Labour. Because our plan for change will fix 7 million extra potholes, free breakfast clubs in primary schools, so every child gets the best chance in life. Bringing back community policing, more police on the beat, making our streets safe for everyone. Supporting our high streets, breathing life back into our town centres, boarded shops reopened, rolling out banking hubs, delivering record funding for local services. That's the change that Labour makes. Now, last year, the general election was that opportunity to vote for change the country. This year, the local elections are the chance to vote for change in your community, vote for change in your neighbourhood, vote for change in your high street, vote for a Labour council that will work hand in hand with a Labour government on our plan for change. Not for parties that continue to put themselves before the country. And I'm not just talking about the Tories. I'm talking about reform as well. They say they want to run the country. They can't even run themselves. You can literally fit their MPs now in the back of a cab, but they still don't know where they're going. They talk the language of workers' rights. They talk it all right, online, sometimes on the doorstep. But what do? They voted against banning hire and refire. They voted against scrapping exploitative zero-hour contracts. They voted against sick leave and maternity pay. That's what they do. And what about the NHS? They want to charge people for using our NHS. They claim to be the party of patriotism. Well, I'll tell you this. There's nothing patriotic about fawning over Putin. No, they will not deliver the change for working people they need. They'll not deliver change for Britain. Only Labour will secure our borders, put more cash in your pocket, make your streets safer, make sure your children have better opportunities, cheaper energy in your home, an NHS that's fit for the future, because that's the change that Labour makes. So bring change to Britain and vote Labour on May the 1st. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much for that welcome, that response. And please, all of us, I think Ange, myself and Ali would like you to know just how much of a lift it gives us when we see you in such good spirits and all the hard work you do. So a massive thanks to all of you. I'm now going to take some questions from the media. I've got a list here, so I'll come to this. I've got Vicky from the BBC. Vicky, first, please.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You're talking a lot about the Conservatives' record, but if the polls are right, it's other parties, including Reform, who are winning over their former voters. Why aren't they turning to you? And I have to ask you for your reaction to tariffs, the overnight news from America.
Well, I think, as I say, 9 months ago, the country voted for change, and that is what we're delivering. The national living wage up £1,400. That's a pay rise for millions of people. Waiting lists that are coming down, potholes that are being filled, wages going up faster than prices, and interest rates coming down. We are beginning to turn the page on this, but we also need to call out reform, because they talk about workers' rights, they talk about protecting people at work. But what do they do in Parliament? They vote against legislation that would improve the protection that people have at work. They talk about the NHS, but what would they do with the NHS? They want to charge for it. We believe in an NHS that's free at the point of need. It's a fundamental principle. And whilst we are building alliances, the security and defence of Europe with our partners, what are they doing? They're fawning over Putin, who is the aggressor. They're fawning over Putin. And that's the difference between us. And that's why it's so important that if anybody wants the change that we're bringing to the country in their community, to vote Labour on May the 1st. On the separate issue of tariffs, we are taking a calm approach, acting in the national interest. And the national interest is to continue our negotiations for a deal with the US, which we made big progress on, and to ensure that we work with the sectors and the industries most impacted. And that's why, amongst other things, I had a round table for some of those businesses this morning. But we must act in the national interest. A trade war is in nobody's interest, in my view. But of course, we have to protect ourselves, and that's why we're keeping all options on the table. Thank you very much, Vicky. I've got Harry from ITV. Harry.
Thank you, Prime Minister. On tariffs, you are dealing with someone in Donald Trump who is clearly extremely unpredictable, and you've talked about how you're trying to continue negotiations to get a trade deal. It's not obvious at this stage that your strategy is working. Are you worried that you're being played here?
No. Look, we've got a long, deep and close relationship with the United States that we've had for decades. On defence, on security and on intelligence sharing. We work more closely as two countries than any other two countries in the world. And therefore it's important we preserve that special close relationship. The same when it comes to the economy and trade. There's a huge amount of trade between us. And I think that, nobody wants a trade war. I need to act in the national interest. And the choice before us was whether to jump into retaliatory action with both feet at the get-go, or to continue with our calm approach of trying to negotiate a deal that will mitigate the tariffs. I think the second course is the right course. I'm fortified in that because all the businesses that I'm talking to intensely, particularly those from the most impacted areas, they agree that that's what they think we should do. So I think that confirms that our approach is the right approach. I accept that we need to go further. I accept that we need to preserve our options, which is why all options are on the table. But I think for the immediate task, that is to secure that deal to mitigate the tariffs if we can, and that's what the sectors want us to do. And so I'm continuing to do that. I think jumping straight into a trade war, I know others are saying, why don't you go straight into a trade war from day one, from the get-go? I don't think that will be in our national interests. But I do think we do have to preserve our rights, which is why we are keeping all options on the table. Thank you, Harry. Beth from Sky.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Donald Trump said his tariff announcement will go down as one of the most important days in American history as he unleashed the biggest change in global trade in a century. You know that this is a massive and profound moment. You've also said that there will be an economic impact, but you know how big this is. So can you please explain in concrete terms for working people looking at all of this overnight, what does it mean for them? What does it mean in terms of jobs? What does it mean in terms of their bills at the supermarket, in terms of public services, in terms of taxes? And just quickly, you keep saying all options are on the table. Back in the House of Commons, your business secretary has just announced a formal consultation with business on retaliatory tariffs. How long are you going to give it until you actually do retaliate? Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. There's a lot bound up in that question, but it's a big discussion and it's a big set of issues, so I accept that. Look, in relation to what I say to working people and to businesses, I say we are acting in your absolute best interest, and that's what I mean by the national interest. A trade war is bad for working people and bad for our businesses, and I don't think we should jump straight into a trade war. I think it is better if we're able to negotiate a better outcome, and that's what we are attempting to do. I do think, just to go back to the beginning of your question, there's a really important moment here that we need to understand. Because over the last few months, we've been talking about a new era when it comes to defence and security, particularly collective defence and security, and recognising that we are in a changing world going into a new era, and therefore we have to act and lead differently. We're at a similar point for trade and the economy. This is not just a short-term tactical exercise. It is the beginning of a new era. And we need to understand that, just as we've understood it for defence and security, we have to understand the changing world when it comes to trade and the economy. And I'm very concerned that we get this argument out there, because it means that we have to adapt in ways which go beyond the mere question of tariffs. And that's why I've instructed my team to go further and faster on what we need to do to put more resilience and more strength into our economy. And again, I say that to working people and businesses. In addition to what we're doing on the tariffs, we are now turbocharging the changes that we need to make sure our economy is stronger, is in thriving, and supporting the way it needs to be as we go into a new era, which we are undoubtedly doing. So in one sense, we've got defence and security, a recognition that we're going into a new era. We need the same recognition, in my view, that we're going to a new era for trade and the economy, and that we will lead from the front, as we have been attempting to do with the security and defence. Thank you very much. Sorry, on the third part of your question, if we're keeping all options on the table, there are various steps that we need to take in order to keep all options on the table, and that's why we are sensibly doing what is necessary. This is driven, as most things are driven by me, in a calm, collected way with a cool head. This is, the sort of pragmatism that we're very good at in Britain, in my view, which is keeping a level head and coolly, calmly taking the right steps for our country. Thank you, Beth. I've got Archie from The Independent.
Economists have warned that Trump's tariffs are going to wipe out economic growth and wipe out the fiscal headroom that the Chancellor built up in the spring statement. Can you guarantee now that in the autumn budget you're not going to have to come back to benefit claimants to balance the books?
Well, the autumn budget is a long way off, and there's a lot of water under that'll have to go under the bridge before then. Obviously, my job, our job, the government's job, is to take the steps necessary in our national interest, which is why we're focusing on progressing the deal that we've been discussing with the US, making sure that we are in a position to take other measures should they be necessary, but at the same time continuing and turbocharging the work we're doing on growth and reform and changing our economy. And an example of that is what we've been doing on planning, led by the Deputy Prime Minister, which was scored by the OBR as the single biggest scored factor when we had the spring statement last week. So I'm not going to get into what may or may not happen in 6 months' time. My job is to make sure that we're in the best possible position as we go through the challenge, and it's undoubtedly a challenge, of tariffs that were imposed by the United States. Thank you, Archie. I'll go to Jack at The Sun.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Jack Elson from The Sun. Last night, the European Union did, in your words, jump 2 feet in and threaten retaliatory tariffs on America. Would you urge them and other countries to follow your approach, being less combative, to avoid stoking a global trade war? And just finally, do you secretly think that Brexit has helped us avoid more punitive tariffs, which have been foisted on our European neighbours?
Well, in my experience, it's not wise to go around telling other countries what they should or shouldn't do. Everybody needs to act in their own best interest, and no doubt they will do so. My job is to lead the United Kingdom through this, focused on our best interest. The situation, I mean, we have our own trading relationship with the US. It is actually a fair and balanced relationship if you look at the numbers. And of course, we've got decades worth of a special relationship with the United States. And I think it's by focusing on those features that we can take the necessary steps to secure our economy through hopefully a deal with options on the table if that's not possible, but also by doing the hard yards of turbocharging our economy, working with businesses. These discussions are quite intense with the sectors most impacted as to what we need to bring forward, how quickly we can make changes, because we also need to recognise that this is not a question of tariffs, which is this week's issue, and by next week or next month will be a different issue. This is where we need to recognise we're living in a changing world, which we undoubtedly are, and we intend to rise to that challenge, but also ensure that we are best equipped as a country to ensure that our economy is strong, thriving and in the right place. Thank you, Jack, and I've got Sophie from the Mirror.
Hi, Sophie Huskisson from the Daily Mirror. So you've said you're not ruling out anything in response to Trump's tariffs, but can you confirm to bereaved families of online safety and the British public whether this includes offering concessions on online safety laws and tax cuts for tech billionaires?
Well, we will act in the national interests, but when it comes to online safety, I've recently, even in the last few days, made it clear how important I think online safety is. We had a roundtable with the writer and co-producer of Adolescence on Monday. I think it was a very powerful session, which reinforced yet again the risks and threats of social media, particularly in that case with young boys, young children, young people. And so, you know, there are issues of the Online Safety Act that are coming into force pretty quickly. They're very important. And we need to look at whether there's other measures that we need to take in relation to online safety. But we'll act, of course we have to act in the national interest, but it's also in the national interest to make sure our young people are safe when they're online. And I think one of the reasons Adolescence was so compelling is because I think any parent or anyone with a relationship with a child, particularly a teenage child, would have felt very strongly that it exposed quite profoundly the risks and challenges, and I don't think we can shrug our shoulders and walk past that, and we won't. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for your warm welcome. Nice to see you. Thank you. How are you doing? Nice to see you.
Well, there we have it. The Labour Party launched their local election campaign, dominated, however, in the questioning by Trump's tariff announcement yesterday. Of course, here on GB News, we've been showing you the launch of all major party campaigns, and the Labour Party have launched theirs today.
Well, should we get some reaction from political commentator Benedict Spence, who's been waiting on the line? Benedict, we'll focus there on the question and answer session, the press conference after the initial launch speech there. Keir Starmer presenting himself as level-headed, saying that the British reaction will be cool, calm and collected, no instant retaliation. Is that the right approach?
I think it's the only approach that we really can have. I think relatively we've gotten off pretty lightly. I think that's not necessarily because Trump is any great friend of Labour or Keir Starmer. It's because we have taken a slightly more soft approach to the United States, but also because I think the US considers us very firmly within its sphere of influence. I think it's much more interesting to look at who actually have had the heavy tariffs imposed on them and who else hasn't. So we haven't. Much of Latin America has got off pretty easily. The European Union has been given a bit of a bloody nose, and I think that that's a sign that the Americans would like to bring Europe closer into its sphere of influence, and also recognise that because it moves as a bloc, that's going to be more difficult, and therefore they will have to be more punitive to effect change from within. Meanwhile, much of Southeast Asia and East Asia has been given a real rough ride, including some of America's allies in that part of the world, Korea and Japan, but also basically China and its client states. Tariffs overall on some Chinese goods are now well over 100% when you factor in embargoes on Venezuelan oil and other tariffs that were already in place. That's been given an absolute kicking, so much so that I'm surprised actually that the Chinese haven't been a little stronger on their response. Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, the places where China exports its own, outsources rather, its own manufacturing capabilities to. This is clearly a sign that the US views that part of the world as a threat. It thinks that Europe needs to get in line with its agenda, and it thinks that we are already pretty much there, or at the very least not causing too much of a fuss to be worth giving a bit of a battering to.
This is, of course, all in the context of a pretty tight fiscal situation in this country. We've just had what the Tories have been banging on about, an emergency budget, what the Labour Party say was just a fiscal statement, a spring statement. But ultimately, we've seen further spending reductions and a lot of worry about fiscal rules being missed. This could wipe away the wiggle room, the small amount of wiggle room that Rachel Reeves bought herself.
Oh, it almost certainly will. But that was going to go anyway. Let's be clear. That was going to just be, even if they'd imposed no tariffs on us, the mischief that this is going to cause elsewhere around the world is probably going to have knock-on effects that would have probably done this to us anyway. And let's be clear, we can go all the way back to Rachel Reeves' first budget, first fiscal statement, and to the sort of the portents of doom that were coming, even from people like The Guardian and the Financial Times, saying this is not going to end particularly well. What I would say is it's enough of a stick with which to beat the UK economy, to potentially get the Labour Party and get the government to enter into more favourable negotiations with the US. And, as much as we all sort of think of Donald Trump as being very America first, and certainly a lot of these tariffs would suggest that that is absolutely his objective, no question about that. He is a deal maker. He is open to the idea of opportunities. And I think that there are a lot within his movement, not all, but a lot, who would actually like to start seeing an expansion of what they would consider a slightly broader ideology than simply America first. And they consider us and Europe as part of that. They recognize that that's going to be difficult, but applying the right amount of economic pressure might mean that more deals can be struck, might mean that more favorable terms can be agreed to perhaps lower what few tariffs have been imposed on us.
OK, well, Benedict Spence, thank you very much, political commentator.
Thank you.
Tom, I thought the speech last night was brilliant. Highly entertaining. The showman, when he whipped out his, placard poster showing all the tariffs, he came across rather reasonable.
It was a show. It was a show, but it was a terrible show.
Yeah, but if you were in one of these old manufacturing areas of the United States where you've seen every factory close, all those jobs lost, you would have thought, well, this is brilliant.
This is a...
And then when he listed all the money coming back into the US...
This is a political nightmare. The numbers on this chart that he's holding up here are completely fabricated. They're not the tariffs
I'm talking about
that
how,
other countries charge on the United States. The United States has responded to an average EU tariff of 5.2% with 20% tariffs. I mean, it's utterly bonkers.
I know that the numbers have been, played around with and that they reflect all sorts of different things, including trade imbalances and regulation, in terms of regulatory tariffs and that sort of thing.
The formula
but imagine you are in one of these towns in the United States where you have seen factories close, where you have seen manufacturing decline, where industry's dead, where you're out of work or you haven't been in work in a traditional industry where you had your job, not that long ago.
Yeah.
You'd be looking at this thinking, brilliant.
Yes, because you wouldn't be a trained economist.
Yeah,
every single economist says that and knows that these places, these car manufacturing places, need to use imports in order to build those cars. It is going to be more expensive to build a car in the United States, not less expensive.
I'm not arguing that we're not going to get a massive hit from this, because we are, particularly our car industry. 25% tariffs is also not going to benefit the United States.
The very places this is designed to help, it will hurt them. It will be more expensive to manufacture in the United States thanks to these tariffs.
But when he, in the second part of his speech, came with that massive list of however many trillions of dollars are going to be invested into the United States, and he said it was as a result of what he's doing here that people, tech companies, manufacturers, etc., he listed that. It sounded impressive, and it will appeal to many a person in the United States.
But this is the fundamental problem about trade wars, about tariff policy. This is concentrated gains and dispersed losses. The hit to the economy will be far greater than any individual part of investment that has been brought in. We've seen the tens of billions wiped off the stock market. Americans with any sort of investments getting poorer by the
is
second.
it a short-term hit?
Because this is the largest tax rise. This is the largest tax rise of any modern president.
Is it a short-term hit, though?
No.
Is it a short-term hit? Because, as Benedict was saying, Trump has said he's open to negotiations. He likes a deal. Potentially, we don't know what our deal is going to be when it comes to trade. Keir Starmer saying they're working on it, whatever that means. So we don't actually know. This may not be the finished rate of tariffs, is what I'm saying.
This is wishful thinking. Donald Trump has said his favourite word in the English language is tariff.
Yeah.
He just likes imposing taxes on American consumers. This is his political ideology. It's the one thing that Donald Trump has been consistent on for 50 years. I mean, this is just the new world we live in. It's harder to move a good from one country to another country, and that's bad for everyone.
If he is successful in bringing some of those dying industries back to the United States therefore helping blue-collar workers...
This is the logic
it may be a positive for him politically, at least.
In the United Kingdom after the Second World War. We thought we only need to nationalise our industry.
Much bigger economy.
We thought we only need to nationalise our industry and subsidise our industry. But what happened to coal mining in the United Kingdom? What happened to steel making in the United Kingdom? Because we subsidised these industries, we tried to insulate them from foreign competition. They degraded, they crumbled, and they died. Because they weren't exposed to foreign competition. Industry has to be exposed to competition,
I understand the economic arguments, but there are a huge number of industries in the United States that have been decimated. And he's banking on some of those jobs coming back to the United States. And if it's true, all of that investment that's coming their way, he possibly could get a little bit of a bump in that direction.
Far more. But why don't we
never
bring it back to the United Kingdom? Because our political editor, Chris Hope, has just left a briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesman. He comes to us live from Westminster. Chris, how are these tariffs impacting the United Kingdom? How is the government responding?
We don't know yet, do we, Tom and Emily? Really, the message coming from number 10 behind me is keep calm and carry on. The government has today launched this lunchtime a consultation on areas that might be affected by these tariffs. They wanted to draw up a list today of areas which the UK could retaliate on. So US goods exported here, what kind of level of a tariff we might impose on them. That consultation will run till May the 1st. And then after that, that will inform government thinking. They are not saying, though, they won't respond with a range of levers, including retaliatory tariffs, before that point. But there's now a consultation starting here to take the temperature of companies. But they do say, and when accused of dragging their feet over the response, number 10 do point to the support of business lobby groups like the Institute of Directors, the British Chambers of Commerce, the CBI, and others, all saying they support this cool, calm and collected approach from this government. We'll wait and see how it plays out. Of course, the 10% tariffs come into force on April the 5th, that's Saturday. I don't think there'll be anything new until then, but the government is slowly getting its act together on how to respond.
Bods. I mean, it does look as though it's going to be the UK car manufacturing industry that's going to be most badly hit.
Yeah, of course, they're facing tariffs of 25%, and they will be badly hit. And the rest to other industries, to other companies. It's a very, very nervous time here. April the 6th, of course, is the day for many companies when the national insurance increase comes in, 1.2% increase on what the money they pay to the Treasury to employ somebody. That happens on Sunday, the same day as the 10% tariffs. We have awful April. It's getting a lot more awful this Sunday. I should also say, while I'm with you, that the Birmingham bins crisis has not gone away. Now, the local government minister, Jim McMullen, is meeting today with council leaders, with local authorities there to try and work out a solution. Number 10's language is hardening on this. They say that a locally led approach is right, because we have got a letter from Sharon Graham, who's the Unite General Secretary, of course a big Labour donor in the past, Unite, written to Angela Rayner, the local government secretary, demanding that the government's not sitting on its hands. Well, the government today is meeting with senior people in Birmingham, and they say to us they want to see agreement reached immediately. No word yet on whether the army might be brought in, no comment on that, not known to the government, but it looks to me like the Birmingham crisis is going rapidly up the national agenda.
Oh my goodness, imagine if the army went in to sort out the bins. I mean, that would be depressing, wouldn't it?
It would. Well,
for them, mostly.
At least the bins would be sorted if that.
Yeah, but the army shouldn't have to do it.
They shouldn't have to, no. Well, Christopher Hope, live from Downing Street. Thanks indeed for bringing us all of that.
We try and put a positive spin on things sometimes, but there's not much positive to say about the Birmingham bins crisis, is there?
The most insane thing is it's a crisis of their own making. I mean, this terrible equal pay lawsuit that forced Birmingham Council to pay bin men the same as indoor cleaners because they're presumably the same. They're different jobs.
Yeah.
Why do they have to be paid the same? They're different jobs.
Yeah, and they've wasted so much money on other things as well. There's probably a long list we can read out. I wonder how much people are paid, you know, the city workers. Anyway, gbnews.com/USA. Do get in touch on absolutely everything that we're talking about today. But if you are in search of some spring sun away from Blighty, here is the forecast.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Well, the UK has plenty of sunshine. There is more wet and windy weather to come across parts of Spain and Portugal over the next couple of days. An area of low pressure bringing wet and windy weather in here. Generally fine across the Canaries. Temperature will be rising here. Plenty of sunshine for Corsica and Sardinia, much of northern Italy. One or two isolated showers in southern Italy. Quite showery over mainland Greece and through parts of Turkey too. A continued possibility of showers here, but some sunny skies for Santorini and warming up a touch in Barcelona.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come on today's programme. Indeed, an Al-Qaeda mastermind linked to the 7/7 attacks is set to walk free in Britain, despite police saying he remains a risk. More of this astonishing story with our security editor after this short break.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another dry and sunny day for many of us, but one exception: through the afternoon and into the evening we will see some showery rain move up from the southwest. This area of low pressure off the coast of Portugal is going to send a number of weather fronts in. The first one bringing thicker cloud and the odd spot of rain to western England and Wales. The next one bringing some more persistent rain later in the day. But elsewhere, apart from a bit of cloud for Shetland and this keen breeze for the east coast, for most it's a warm and sunny day. Temperatures pegged back on the east coast, single figures in places because of that brisk wind from the North Sea. Inland, though, particularly towards the west, temperatures of the high teens or even low 20s. However, temperatures will be limited later in the afternoon across southwest England because of the arrival of some cloud and some outbreaks of rain, some heavy bursts, particularly for Exeter westwards. Into South Wales as well, that rain will move, but for Northern Ireland, North Wales, northern and central England, as well as for much of Scotland, it's a clear end to the day. Plenty of fine weather, and although it will be much cooler on the east coast, it is also going to be, again, sunny skies for many. Now, the area of rain in the southwest will move into parts of South and Mid Wales overnight, eventually reaching parts of southeast Northern Ireland and central southern England during the early hours, but it's petering out all the while. So this area of cloud covering a larger region by the start of Friday, and as a result, frost-free. And we'll also see frost-free conditions on the east coast because of the brisk breeze, but a touch of frost possible for western Scotland. That's where the best of the sunshine will be on Friday morning, and despite the cloud elsewhere, well, we will see brighter weather emerge into the afternoon, and for most it's another warm and sunny afternoon with even higher temperatures, 23 Celsius possible.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 10 to 1. Now, an Al-Qaeda mastermind linked to the 7/7 attacks is set to walk free in Britain, all despite the police still saying he remains a risk.
Yes, it's understood that apparently the justice system cannot fully assess Haroon Aswad due to mental health treatment that he's been undergoing, so they can't assess whether he is a terrorist risk to us all, which is wonderful. So, yes, he was linked to the 7/7 attacks. That was 2005, killed about 50 people.
Well, let's get the details now with our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, I mean, this is just an astonishing story.
Yes, very worrying indeed. We saw images there in the introduction, perhaps we can show them again, of Haroon Aswad sitting next to Abu Hamza on the left-hand side. Now, for those who don't remember Abu Hamza, he was a notorious figure 25 years ago. The hook-handed cleric, he was described as, used to hold these hateful prayer meetings outside Finsbury Park Mosque in North London. Well, Haroon Aswad was one of his associates who had attempted to set up a terrorist training camp in the United States, in Oregon, of all places, in 1999. He had also gone off, trained in a terrorist training camp in Afghanistan. He'd been in an Al-Qaeda safe house in Pakistan. He'd met two of the Al-Qaeda 7/7 bombers. There's also links to the 7/7 bombers in that a phone link to Haroon Aswad had multiple calls, about 20 calls in the days and hours before the 7/7 attacks. And he was eventually arrested, actually, in 2005 in Zambia. He was extradited to the UK, but then embarked on this very lengthy legal challenge against attempts by the Americans to extradite him to the US to stand trial for setting up the terrorist camp there, citing his mental health condition. So, of course, the lawyers and the human rights groups fought on his behalf for almost a decade. He was eventually sent to the US and he was convicted alongside Abu Hamza, who you see there. Also, that's Anjem Choudhury on the pictures there. The thing about Abu Hamza and Anjem Choudhury is, for so many years, they were dismissed as just clown-like figures who, you know, they were very bellicose in their language, but people to be ignored rather than feared. But the years that followed have shown us just how these individuals have been linked to multiple horrific terrorist attacks and multiple people who have been charged and later convicted with terrorist offences. They are a real danger, and as the officials, the security services and the police believe that Haroon Aswad was as well. But as you said in your introduction there, because he's been treated following his conviction in the US and then released back to the UK for more mental health treatment, because he's been treated, we're not able to get a full assessment of the potential threat that he poses.
Apparently in 2022, when he was being held up in the United States, he said, "I'm a terrorist, I want to kill Jews, Christians and Muslim enemies." That was, what, 3 years ago? And this guy's going to be walking around Batley in Yorkshire.
Yeah, well, he told a psychiatrist that, and we're told that, you know, he's a paranoid schizophrenic, but he's responded well to treatment. But where have we heard that before? If you remember Valdo Calacane and the Nottingham stabbings, a paranoid schizophrenic that didn't take his medication, went downhill rapidly, and went then on to commit those horrific murders. And of course, there is also an issue, a big issue, with people who have served time for terrorist offences coming out and then posing a threat to society. Anjem Choudhury was returned to prison again for reoffending. But you remember the Fishmongers Hall terrorist attack in 2019 when two young people involved in offender reintegration, they were stabbed by Usman Khan, who was then shot dead by armed police there on London Bridge. And then again, Streatham, just a few months later in South London.
Another attempted rehabilitated, well, Mark...
Sudhir Shaman shot dead after he stabbed 2 people.
We'll be back with you, of course, in the next hour. This is a huge story.
Lots more to talk about.
It throughout the programme. But do stay with us here on Good Afternoon Britain. Plenty more to come in the next hour after the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's turning into a very different day for parts of Wales and the southwest, with outbreaks of rain turning up, dry elsewhere and more warm sunshine for many as high pressure continues to dominate the weather. That's sitting to the north. We've got this easterly breeze, but we've also got a number of weather fronts moving up from the southwest. Hence the increase in cloud and outbreaks of rain across southwest England into South Wales and then central southern England, eventually Northern Ireland overnight. This cloudier zone across southwestern parts means that it isn't going to be a frosty start to Friday, but it will be a cloudier start with some showers around. Towards the north and the east, it's clearer skies and feeling cold first thing Friday, but that's where the best of the sunshine will be. Some patchy low cloud affecting parts of the Pennines into the southern uplands, and this area of cloud edging into the northeast of Scotland. Inland, though, and away from the cloudy areas, it's going to be a chilly start to Friday with a touch of frost in parts of the Highlands and Grampians. Northern Ireland seeing thicker cloud, an odd spot of rain, likewise for West Wales into the southwest. But this area of cloud and rain is tending to peter away and, well, through the morning and into the afternoon, skies do brighten towards the west, although I think the wall-to-wall sunshine that we've seen recently won't reappear until much later in the afternoon on Friday. Otherwise, it's for most a dry and fine day once again. Some patchy low cloud affecting the east coast and the breeze from the North Sea making it feel cold on that east coast. But inland and particularly towards the south and southwest, a very warm day, 22 or 23 Celsius. Then we go into Friday evening with effectively a continuation of the east-northeasterly breeze. So some patchy low cloud in the east. Otherwise, it's sunny skies all around, and that continues through the weekend and into the start of next week.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can spruce up your spring, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not one, but 2 sought-after designer watches. Make sure you don't miss out, as lines close on the 4th of April. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Withensea. It's an East Yorkshire seaside town that's been here for centuries. Once a bustling coastal resort, now only its pier towers remain. And like many British seaside destinations, it's seen a drop in holiday makers.
Gone are the days when we had packed beaches. The area has changed and you know, it just needs a little bit more, so there's something to do for people.
Since they pulled the railway, that was a death of witnesses sort of thing. Slowly it's died to what it is now. About the next thing, I guess, it'll go in the sea.
Yeah, I think it's a typical English seaside town, and sometimes they don't move with the times, do they?
And it hasn't changed a lot since, you know, when I come. But still people here, still people come.
Plans for a new pier were scrapped in 2023 due to funding issues. Now, with price hikes brought on by Labour's autumn budget, business owners are feeling the pinch. Annette Bagley owns the Rosy Leaf Cafe, and she's been forced to put up her prices.
It's been a bit hard because the wages have gone up, national insurance has gone up, so everything is going up. My costs for just running the place, the coffee's gone up, chocolate's gone up. Everything really has just gone up, and I'm afraid I've had to pass that on to customers by putting my prices up a little bit.
East Riding Council has schemes in place to boost the economy.
And we're just trying to make the town better in lots of different ways. We also have a big voluntary group called Town Smart, and there's a great team of volunteers, and we're out there litter picking, cleaning, painting, and we're also going to sort of see if we can create a business collective and a business group as we go forwards to help local businesses.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 3rd of April. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, the morning after the night before, indeed the afternoon after the night before, global stock markets, they took a bit of a hammering as Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs have been announced. Now, Keir Starmer admits the British economy will be hit, despite us being one of the lowest impacted countries on that historic list. We're live up and down the country assessing the impact here at home.
We know there has been a lot of investigation, but it has not been anywhere near the scale required in order to get to the root of what's been happening across our country.
And a GB News exclusive, a push for a harder crackdown on grooming gangs. Kemi Badenoch calls for a second vote on a national public inquiry. So today we're asking, has the scandal been ignored?
Yes, and the fate of boys is a defining issue of our time, says the Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson, as she's calling for more men to become teachers in order to combat toxic behaviours within our schools. Is she right?
The impact of these tariffs is going to be absolutely huge.
Oh, well, no doubt about that. I'm very interested to see how it doesn't look like we're going to retaliate, so we can sort of scrap that. But other countries, the European Union, lots of fighting talk coming from Ursula von der Leyen. What are China going to do?
It's a really difficult thing to think about because it's not just the United States tariffs on us. It's the wider network of just-in-time supply chains around the world that are all interdependent on many different countries. And as these tariff walls go up, it means that it's not just imports from the United States or exports to the United States that are going to get more dear and less attractive, but frankly, just about everything in the global trading system.
But could it be that there's a bit of a shock, yes, but then people get used to the different tariffs that apply to various countries. The various deals come to a head and things change a little and people stop certain regulations that go against the United States or they bring down their tariffs in one way or another and things sort of settle down, Tom. You know, it might not be this absolute catastrophe that you paint it as.
Look, everything being more expensive might not be a catastrophe. But it was certainly enough of a catastrophe to lose Kamala Harris the last election.
You don't know if everything's going to become more expensive in the United States if Trump reaches his aim of bringing back a lot of manufacturing to that country.
OK, let's deal with that. What about Nike trainers? Nike trainers, 50% of them are made in Vietnam, around 30% are made in Indonesia and around 20% in China. So there is no domestic manufacturing plant in the United States for trainers. Why? It's pretty labour-intensive. And we often talk about Southeast Asia and these standards of what sometimes are called sweatshops. We don't like to think about it, we talk about it a lot, but it means that trainers are affordable.
Yeah, so you don't care about slave trade, slave labour? You don't care if someone's paid a penny a piece?
So this could be the choice, right? If Donald Trump now wants to get all of that manufacturing in the United States, are there going to be people that work for that low amount of money? No. Is the technology available yet to do this all robotically? No. We are going to be paying much more than the tariff on these trainers. Trainers are going to double in price.
Well, we shall see.
This is the sort of real-world impact that these tariffs will have. I don't think enough people have sort of internalised the world that we're reverting to.
Well, there are a lot of people who would say that we shouldn't necessarily be relying on products which are made by hostile states, despotic regimes even, those with very low human rights and lots of human rights
like
abuses.
Canada.
The fact that we have been so dependent on China, for example, is something that many of our politicians have tried to speak out on, not least Ian Duncan-Smith, for one.
Here's the thing.
So perhaps...
In the context of these tariffs says, oh, China, China, China. But the tariffs aren't just on China. In the first term, that's where the tariffs are focused. But now it's on trading partners, on allies,
you must admit it's a bit hypocritical coming from the European Union as well, considering they're the most protectionist racket in the world as well.
I mean, they do have they do have tariffs, but the average on the US is 5.2%. It's nowhere near the 20% the US is.
Well, there's regulations, there's VAT, there's all sorts of different taxes. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch, but it's Tatiana with your headlines.
Good afternoon. The top stories. London's FTSE 100 index dropped sharply on opening, falling by 1.4% in the first few minutes of trading after the US president unveiled sweeping new tariffs on US imports. The Prime Minister's spoken to business leaders this morning, while the Trade Secretary will look to calm markets after Donald Trump imposed a 10% tariff on US imports of UK goods. The Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, said this morning he's working to get the US tariffs reversed rather than securing an economic deal to offset them. A 25% tariffs also come into effect today in the UK on all foreign cars imported to the US, a move which experts fear could cost 25,000 jobs in the British car industry. President Trump says the EU's rate will be 20%. President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has vowed a unified response, and China has demanded that Trump revoke the tariffs and vowed countermeasures. Other world leaders have voiced concerns of an escalating trade war. The Prime Minister told business chiefs in Downing Street that clearly there will be an economic impact, but that the government would respond with cool and calm heads.
But I want to be crystal clear. We are prepared. Indeed, one of the great strengths of this nation is our ability to keep a cool head. I said that in my first speech as Prime Minister, and that is how I govern. Nobody wins in a trade war. That is not in our national interest. We have a fair and balanced trade relationship with the US, negotiations on an economic prosperity deal, one that strengthens our existing trading relationship. They continue, and we will fight for the best deal for Britain.
Well, the Business Secretary told the Commons this afternoon that the UK only being hit by 10% import taxes by the US has vindicated the government's approach to talks with the United States.
We are, of course, disappointed by the increase in tariffs on the UK and on other countries around the world. The impact will be felt amongst all trading nations. But I would like to update the House on how the UK can navigate these turbulent times, acting in our national interest and for the benefit of all our industries. On everything from defence, economic security, financial services, machinery, tech and regulation, there are clear synergies between the US and UK markets. And this is reflected in the fair and balanced trading relationship that already exists between our two countries. I can confirm to the House that those talks are ongoing and will remain so. It is this government's view that a deal is not just possible, it is favourable to both countries.
Sir Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner have launched Labour's local election campaign today, promising to bring change to Britain ahead of its first major test at the ballot box since entering office. Labour's focusing its opening pitch to voters on healthcare, pointing to swift action taken by the government to end planned doctors' strikes by offering an improvised pay rise after entering office. The party says the negotiation of a deal early on has helped spare disruption to hundreds of thousands of appointments.
We've cut waiting lists by 200,000. At the election 9 months ago, we promised 2 million extra NHS appointments in the first year of a Labour government, and we delivered that in 7 months. That's a promise made and a promise delivered. Because this government got around the table, because we ended the strikes within 4 weeks, because we put doctors back on the front line, not the picket line, We saved 500,000 NHS appointments. That's the change that Labour makes. Fuel duty, cut. That's the change that Labour makes. Wages rising faster than prices. That's the change that Labour makes.
In other news, a 7-year-old boy was killed in a house explosion caused by criminals using 100 gas canisters to make cannabis gummy sweets in the flat below. 33-year-old Rhys Galbraith has admitted the manslaughter of Archie York and Galbraith's friend Jason J. Laws, 35, who died in that blast in Newcastle in the early hours of the 16th of October. The blast wrecked the street, rendered families homeless and led to a major emergency services response. Galbraith also admitted possessing and supplying cannabis between November 2023 and October last year. And some breaking news to finish. The Charity Commission said it has opened a case into concerns raised about the Centre Barley charity, which the Duke of Sussex quit as patron of last week amid a boardroom battle. More on that as we get it. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news in half an hour.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is now 9 minutes past 1. Now, British goods being imported into the United States will be hit by a 10% tariff, all from the 5th of April.
Yes, the EU, on the other hand, will receive a 20% tariff, so they're coming worse off.
United Kingdom 10%, and we'll go 10%. So we'll do the same thing. You know, you think of the European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%. We're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half.
You love this.
I just think the presentation is just such a showman, isn't it?
If it was a TV show, I'd be laughing along.
Yeah, it's brilliant. You can tell he was in TV and everything else.
This is real people's jobs. This is people's investments. This is people's livelihoods.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Absolutely it is.
Taxing it away.
But, you know, he's a politician that likes to perform.
Well, the Prime Minister hit back at all of this new tariff news this morning, assuring business chiefs that the government would respond with cool and calm heads, but acknowledged the economic impact here at home, all after that trade announcement.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's head back to Downing Street, where we're joined by our political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, it's hard to know what to believe. There seems to be lots of various briefings to various media outlets. Apparently, the government is now considering retaliatory tariffs.
Yes, all options on the table. Welcome back to Downing Street, where behind us, Keir Starmer's team are working out what to do and what to happen before Saturday when these rules, these new tariffs come in. The government has said today they're having a consultation with all companies in the country who want to give an idea, an input from them on how to respond to these 10% tariffs. Of course, car makers, they're at 25%. That's Mini and the like from the UK exporting to the US. Everyone else exporting to the US gets 10%. Until May the 1st, they deny the government there. They are dragging their feet. They point out that business lobby groups are supporting an approach best described as keep calm and carry on. They've got the Institute for Directors, the CBI, the British Chamber of Commerce, all backing this approach. The number 10 says today, we have a range of levers at our disposal. It's right, we have options on the table. Industries don't want a knee-jerk reaction. They won't give a deadline for when that might happen. They do leave the option open of responding with retaliatory tariffs before May the 1st, but after May the 1st, they'll get an idea of what companies want. That means 4 weeks when British industry could face these 10% tariffs and all the fallout from that, and companies are always planning ahead. No one knows how long this new regime might last for. On your point there about Brexit and the EU, Emily and Tom, I did ask number 10 whether the PM viewed the fact that we have 10% tariffs and the EU has 20% tariffs, whether that was a Brexit dividend. They declined to go back into the old Brexit argument, says we are where we are, we're not going to relitigate the old Brexit arguments.
Much, Christopher Hope. Thank you, Christopher. Moving on, the UK exported almost £60 billion worth of goods to the US last year, mainly machinery, cars, of course, and pharmaceuticals.
Well, we're joined by a reporter, Steve Bennett, at Jaguar Land Rover in Halewood. So what impact might this have on our car manufacturers, our sort of pride and joy in the UK?
Hi, good afternoon to you both. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, the main thing will be potentially jobs. That's the first thing to be aware of. 25,000 jobs are potentially at risk now as a result of the 25% import tariff that President Donald Trump has brought in. And what that now means is on both sides of the pond, if you're buying a new Land Rover, a Range Rover, to be more specific, in America, it could cost you up to $30,000 more than before. And what that means is the Americans are going to have to pay more, and then the cost will have to be picked up back this end in Britain, which inevitably, to save those costs, will lead to job losses. That is what's being predicted. Now, £9 billion worth of cars are shipped to America last year, and that makes up 17% of the amount of cars that we that we export anywhere around the world. So the figures this morning are very concerning, but as we've already heard from the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, we're not in a position where we are panicking. We're looking to continue negotiating a new trade deal. We don't want to get into a trade war. That's not going to get anybody anywhere. But we have been speaking to some workers here at Jaguar Land Rover. Unfortunately, no one wanted to speak on camera with us, but there are definitely concerns, and certainly with members of the public as well milling around this area. Again, they didn't want to go on camera, but they did express that there are concerns for livelihoods, not just for themselves, but for their friends and family in this area as well. Now, last week I was down at Bentley in Crewe when we were predicting that this was going to come into effect today, and similar concerns down there. Bentley they produce all of the cars in Crewe, both cars and parts that they export around the world. So big concerns down there about how much that's going to affect their exporting trade, because it's such a massive percentage of what they do. And then other great British brands, Aston Martin, we saw their stocks fall last week when this news was breaking, and Mini down in Oxfordshire, they'll be hit by this as well. So really is a concerning time for the automobile industry as it kind of figures out how this will impact everybody nationwide here in Britain.
OK, Steve Bennett, thank you very much indeed. We're now going to fly over to Catherine Forster, who's in the East Midlands, I believe, if I remember correctly. She's there for Labour's local election launch. But, Catherine, there was also a Q&A session, and, of course, it's centred on Trump's tariffs.
Yes, good afternoon. Of course it did. We're here in Derbyshire. Labour have got their new slogan, which is bring change to Britain. So 3 more words than change that they campaigned on last year. And of course, they want to talk about extra hospital appointments through ending the doctors' strike. They say they've made 2 million more doctors' appointments in just 9 months. They want to talk about all these things, potholes, all the rest of it. But honestly, all the focus is on this huge global shock brought about by Donald Trump's announcement of global tariffs last night with a baseline of 10%. That is, of course, what we are going to be hit with as of Saturday night. Now, we're here at a pharmaceutical company. We export a lot of pharmaceuticals to the United States. This is one of the industries that's particularly going to be hit, but the Prime Minister taking a very keep calm and carry on approach. But let's have a look at just a bit of what he had to say.
It is not a question of tariffs, which is this week's issue, and by next week or next month will be a different issue. This is where we need to recognise we're living in a changing world, which we undoubtedly are, and we intend to rise to that challenge, but also ensure that we are best equipped as a country to ensure that our economy is strong, thriving and in the right place.
A reflection, I think, of the fact, the enormity of this, that this is not a story that's here today, gone tomorrow. This is going to have very, very profound effects going forward. The Prime Minister talking about a new era when it comes to trade and the economy, as with defence and security, because, of course, since Trump came in, we've announced big increases in defence spending. The world has changed now. What this is going to mean, we don't know. The Prime Minister is still holding out for a deal, still saying hopefully the UK will get a deal, but they are keeping everything on the table. They've announced this consultation with businesses, so they are reserving the right to retaliate if necessary. They don't want to go there at the moment, unlike the EU. They're still trying to find a way through this. But look, I think, Rachel Reeves Spring statement just a week ago. This throws everything into doubt. That fiscal headroom that she had, everything potentially changes now, and it could well be that the government will have to come back in the autumn with more tax rises or more spending cuts.
OK, well, thank you very much. Catherine Forster there from the East Midlands. Should we go to Scotland? Yeah. Yes, why not? Tony Maguire's there, and he's been asking people what the tariffs mean for them. Tony, take it away.
Yes, good afternoon. Certainly, this has obviously been a big topic for a lot of people, you know, and whether the understanding is all there is really another question. But, you know, the word on the street today is very much tariffs, 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 all the way up and down the United Kingdom. Certainly here in Scotland, there's a lot of awareness about what this could mean for not just the Scotch whisky industry, but of course Scottish salmon as well. And a lot of people, you know, actually going further and wondering, is this going to further impact the cost of living? Is this going to have knock-on effects to other parts of their lives? But when it comes to the tariffs themselves, what is the general understanding? Certainly, as you say, the presentation yesterday was a lot of show, but how much of it actually sunk in as to what it means? You know, tariffs, you know, is that a perfectly manicured roll of lawn that helps to beautify the back garden? Is it a collective slur for J.K. Rowling sympathisers who oppose transgender ideology, or is it something else? Well, I spoke to the people of Glasgow today, and others have been chatting around the United Kingdom to find out just how much of that presentation sunk in yesterday.
I mean, why did no other president ever come up with something like that? Why did it have to come from him? What is it with him and different for other presidents? It seems to be very single-minded to do with.
I'm hoping this is not going to affect our economy, but I think, and I'm hoping it's not going to affect the standard of living here. Obviously, these tariffs are going to make a big impact on Britain. So I'm worried about that.
This year I think it's going to be difficult for people. There's going to be everything more closing down businesses. They're even on about the whisky today, you know, in Scotland. And I think these tariffs is ridiculous.
So there we go, not turf, not tariffs, tariffs, going to affect everyone in all walks of life across the entire United Kingdom.
Do we know what it is? Well, thank you very much, and interesting to hear what the people of Glasgow have to say about it all.
Absolutely.
Not too keen by the sounds of things.
No, nothing really positive coming out of that at all. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come. We've got some breaking news for you just in from the royal family. We'll reveal all after this short break.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as
and now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 24 minutes past 1. Now, hold your horses for the royal breaking news. We'll bring you that in a little moment's time. But for now, a convicted terrorist linked to the 7/7 attacks is set to walk free in Britain, despite the police saying he still remains a risk.
Yes, this is deeply concerning. It's understood that the justice system cannot fully assess whether Haroon Aswat is a terrorist risk due to the mental health treatment that he's receiving.
Well, joining us now is the Executive Director at the Henry Jackson Society, Dr. Alan Mendoza. Alan, thanks for joining us. This does seem the most extraordinary story. The guy seems to be having a lesser punishment or a greater risk to the country, quite frankly, because of his claimed mental health issues.
Yeah, it's insanity to go on that terminology. I mean, he's got mental health problems, that much is evident. But the psychiatrist who compiled a report into him believes that even in his non-compromised state, he's an extremist with very dangerous views. The police believe he is still a national security threat, so his case officers think he is still a problem. So whether you think he is mentally ill or not, it is quite clear that he's a danger. And then the idea, therefore, that he's going to be wandering around the community and, kind of emailing the police where he's going and this is sufficient is really for the birds. I mean, this is a man, let's not forget, who was jailed ultimately for trying to set up a terrorist training camp in Oregon. The Americans got him, jailed him. He got deported here eventually to finish his sentence. Now we expect him to behave normally. It's just not there. He's an extremist, dangerous extremist, and one who is a threat to national security.
An accomplice to the 7/7 attacks in this country, in London, that left 52 people dead and many hundreds injured, those horrific attacks that took place in 2005. And by the sounds of this, according to the High Court judge at least, the fact his treatment has been effective, the judge says, and he's going to return to his family, apparently in Batley, in Yorkshire. Now, I imagine if you happen to be living next to this man, you wouldn't be very happy, would you, Alan?
No, particularly as he has given in the past, part of the things he went down for. He had made threats to Christians, Jews, and even fellow Muslims, people who weren't, in his view, as pure as they should be, basically. So no, if I was somebody living in that community, I'd be deeply concerned about the prospect of someone like this returning, someone who, although it is said that his mental health has improved, as we've just stated, the prison report suggests that even when he's not in a mentally ill state, he is still a dangerous extremist. So I'd be worried about him from both counts, and I would certainly be concerned that he might start radicalising people again.
Hang on, let's just break this down to its very basic steps. If this guy was not a nutcase, if this guy was a completely compos mentis terrorist, he would be having more restrictions placed on him, even in his freed state.
Yes.
But if he's an absolute, bonkers individual who's... I'm sorry I'm using all of these terms. I should probably be a bit more politically correct.
You're not being very PC, actually.
I should be more politically correct about it. If he was experiencing psychosis, then we're going to monitor him less.
Apparently he was a paranoid schizophrenic, so that's the sort of thing he was diagnosed with. So that is a bit of a problem, obviously, in that respect.
But how on earth have we built a system whereby if you're sane, you're restricted more, and if you are insane, you're restricted less?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, again, we're using these terms, but the reality is there's nothing else to describe this in a system where you could even perhaps game the system, couldn't you? Feign this problem, come out with fewer restrictions, and then re-offend. I mean, it's quite clear that whatever one thinks of his mental illness, as I keep stressing, he is still a dangerous extremist. His views have not changed, and his case officers believe he is still a threat to national security. So although he hasn't filled in the form, there's a formal assessment you have to do to look at this. Although that hasn't been able to be proceeded because of his mental health state, it is important to note his case officers do not think he is, just going to go back and become a peaceful citizen. They think there might be a concern with him, and therefore it is doubly perplexing as to why this is happening now.
Yeah, and only 3 years ago he was telling a psychiatrist that he's a terrorist and he wants to kill Jews, Christians, Muslim enemies, etc., as you said. Is there a risk that there are more like him, so more terrorists of this era who may be up for release soon?
Well, they're all, I mean, a lot of them are up for release. If you look at the people who were jailed between, say, the early 2000s and the late 2010s, then most of them are coming up for their releases now. We've had all sorts of interesting cases where people have come out or about to be coming out. And again, it's quite uncertain as to whether they actually have been de-radicalized or whether they are still a threat or not. And of course, let's not forget, if someone is deemed to be a threat, the cost of monitoring them around the clock, week in, week out, is ruinous to the taxpayer as well. So we have that problem to contend with as well, the cost of monitoring potentially dangerous people coming out of prison. And the whole thing adds up to a perfect storm, to be frank.
Yeah, and apparently this one won't be under surveillance. He won't wear a tag, and he'll be able to travel abroad even if he tells the police in advance.
Oh, joy.
So straight back off to, well, terrorist hotspots perhaps. Dr. Alan Mendoza, thank you very much indeed, Executive Director at the Henry Jackson Society.
Well, we're going to head to that breaking news now, just coming into us regarding the royal family.
Yes, the Charity Commission says it has opened a case into concerns raised about the Centre Barley charity, which the Duke of Sussex quit as patron last week amid a boardroom battle.
Well, here to tell us all about it is our royal reporter, Cameron Walker. Cameron, this is a significant moment in this saga.
Yeah, it certainly is. And if you remember, the chair of the charity did a media round, essentially, over the weekend, accusing Prince Harry and other former trustees of bullying, harassment and misogyny. A source close to Prince Harry, if you remember, said that she was just talking a bit of a publicity stunt, is the phrase that source particularly used. But it is significant, but I think we need to clear something up. This isn't the Charity Commission investigating Prince Harry's conduct here. They are they are investigating even whether the charity Centre Barley complied with all of everything it needs to do legally. So that is looking at how it's being governed, what the trustees did or didn't do, including Prince Harry, of course, and what, of course, the chair is doing. Because this boardroom battle, as you said in your introduction there, is apparently over whether or not funds for the charity should be raised in Africa or abroad. If you remember, Prince Harry regularly competes in polo matches, charity polo matches, to raise money for Centre Barley, a charity set up in 2006 to be honour the legacy of his mother and help young people in southern Africa. In the last few moments, we've actually heard from the chair of Centre Barley, Sophie Chanduka, and she says that she welcomes the case being opened by the Charity Commission and hopes the outcome can comfort the public that the charity and its new trustees are acting appropriately. She also makes the point that she raised concerns with the Charity Commission back in February of this year, so a couple of months ago. So what happens now? There's going to be an investigation. At the end of that investigation, a number of things can happen. If they are found in breach, of course, the charity could well be shut down, or there could, of course, be a fine or some other appropriate action will be taken. But, of course, it's just an investigation at this stage. No findings have been issued.
Prince Harry's life seems awfully turbulent. You've got all these legal challenges against the newspapers. Yeah. You've got charities now being looked at by the Charity Commission. It's all a bit much, isn't it?
But of course he stepped back as a trustee of this charity this time a week ago. But yes, he's still suing the Home Office over his security arrangements here in the UK.
Of course, yes, that too.
That's still ongoing.
Oh, to be a lawyer working for Prince Harry. Well, Cameron Walker, thanks indeed for joining us.
Yeah, meanwhile, Meghan is sold out on her new website, her new shop. Yes, all the honey's gone, all the flower sprinkles have gone, all the raspberry jam has gone. Sorry, Tom, you won't be getting any for Christmas because
She'll have to put the beekeeping suit back on.
she'll have to make some more, won't she?
Go out to the hives, chivvy them along. I don't know how to make these make up.
Well, you'd learn if you watched her series.
Does she actually do beekeeping in it?
Apparently so.
She does.
Yeah, Cameron knows. He had to wash it all.
The more you know. My life has changed. Yeah. I have to. I'm sorry to break it to you.
There are some things Tom doesn't know how to do, believe it or not. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots all coming up on today's show, including a GB News exclusive. Yes, Kemi Badenoch has called for a second vote on a national public inquiry into the grooming gangs scandal. We'll reveal all next.
Emily, thank you. Good afternoon. The top stories. London's FTSE 100 index dropped sharply on opening, falling by 1.4% in the first few minutes of trading today after the US president unveiled sweeping new tariffs on US imports. The Prime Minister's spoken to business leaders this morning, while the Trade Secretary is looking to calm markets after Donald Trump imposed a 10% tariff on US imports of UK goods. The Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, said this morning he's working on getting the US tariffs reversed rather than securing an economic deal to offset them. A 25% tariffs also come into effect today in the UK on all foreign cars imported to the US, a move that experts fear could cost 25,000 jobs in the British car industry. President Trump says the EU's rate will be 20%. President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has vowed a unified response. China has demanded that Trump revoke the tariffs and vowed countermeasures, whilst other world leaders have voiced concerns of an escalating trade war. The Prime Minister told business chiefs in Downing Street that clearly there will be an economic impact, but that the government would respond with cool and calm heads. Sir Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner have launched Labour's local election campaign today, promising to bring change to Britain ahead of its first major test at the ballot box since entering office. Labour's focusing its opening pitch to voters on healthcare, pointing to swift action taken by the government to end planned doctor strikes by offering an improved pay rise. The party says the negotiation of a deal early on has helped spare disruption to hundreds of thousands of appointments. The party's basing that claim on NHS data, suggesting 507,000 cancellations occurred between July 2023 and last March, during periods of industrial action under the last government. And a watchdog has escalated its investigations into concerns raised about a charity founded by the Duke of Sussex amid a boardroom battle with the organisation. The Charity Commission said it's opened a regulatory compliance case into Centre Barley a week after it emerged Harry had quit as patron. Last week it emerged that several trustees had left the charity in a dispute with its chairwoman Sophie Chenduka, having requested her resignation. Prince Harry and Prince Sisu backed the departing trustees and announced they had resigned as patrons until further notice. Ms Chenduka issued a statement in which she alleged there'd been poor governance, weak executive management, abuse of power, bullying, harassment and misogyny. And those are the latest headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. In Tyne and Wear, the A692 is closed each way southwest of Gateshead after an accident. On the M6 in Greater Manchester, 3 lanes are closed southbound between junctions 26 and 25 from the M58 to Bryn. The M5 in the West Midlands is closed in both directions between junctions 3 and 2, between Halesowen and Albury for an investigation. They're accused from junction 4 at Bromsgrove and back on the M6 from junction 8. In Nottinghamshire, the A60 is closed southbound along Mansfield Road at Ravenshead after an accident, and Eurotunnel reporting a wait of up to an hour and a half for passengers at Folkestone. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Do you know what the little green huts dotted around central London are? I went to Grosvenor Gardens earlier this week to visit one. Excuse me, sir. There's a green building there.
Yeah.
Have you any idea what it's for?
No idea. No. What is it? Do you know?
Dotted around central London are elegant green huts, which are as distinctive of the metropolis as the red and blue roundels that stand above underground stations. These little structures are celebrating 150 years of gracing the urban landscape. But I wonder how many people notice them or could tell you what purpose they serve. Do you have the London knowledge to say what their use is? Hello, are you the famous Sue?
I'm Sue, yes. Lovely to meet you.
Oh, lovely to see you. Now, how long have you worked here?
This October will be 22 years.
And what is this?
So this is a taxi hut that was put up in the 1800s. There were several of them plotted around London, but sadly I think there's only about 13 left at the moment.
John, do you find yourself using the taxi shelters very much?
You know, the food's good, it's cheap, and, you know, you've got all of your friends in here and people that you have a little bit of banter with. You know, have a nice bit of food and drink and a bit of fun. During the day, if you know, where you can't stop on the streets for parking restrictions, the shelters, we've all got our own parking.
Is it a good amenity for you?
Fantastic. The food, everything is fantastic. The boys, the light-hearted badinage, the entertainment, and most of all, the girls who serve us. How they put up with it, I don't know.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 20-2. Now, Kemi Badenoch has hit out at the Labour Party for not holding a national inquiry into grooming gangs.
Yes, so the Conservative leader spoke to GB News national reporter Charlie Peters, and this is what she had to say.
We know there has been a lot of investigation, but it has not been anywhere near the scale required in order to get to the root of what's been happening across our country. We are still pushing for Labour to start a national inquiry. And today we're going to be putting some amendments down in the crime bill so that we can have another vote, which they can't obscure like they did previously, have another vote so that MPs and Parliament can vote on ensuring that we get full justice for all of those victims.
Well, that's what Kemi had to say. But have these grooming gangs and the scandal more widely, has it fallen out of the press and therefore started to become ignored once more?
Well, who better to talk to than our very own Charlie Peters, our national reporter. Charlie, interesting, that interview with Kemi Badenoch. She very much wants to get this back on the agenda.
Yeah, has it been ignored is a great question.
But has it been ignored?
Well, for 3 months now since that big eruption of coverage in January when the government promised 5 local inquiries, £5 million to support them. There'd also be this Baroness Casey-led inquiry, internal audit of what the Home Office already knows. That was meant to come back this month, but we don't know when they will return with more information. The terms of reference for that audit only published last month, so that's going to be late. But also we had this extraordinary evidence-giving session from Tom Crowther Casey, the barrister appointed by the government to look into and develop these local inquiry frameworks. He's also been appointed and asked by the government to chair the Oldham inquiry, one of only 5 they've announced so far. And when he gave evidence 2 days ago at the Home Affairs Select Committee, he revealed that he had to text a deputy director in the Home Office, "Do you still want me?" Well over a month after they started this process. So slow was the progress, so limited was the communication. It was quite a remarkable evidence-giving session. The MPs on that committee murmuring in shock as he gave those details. And I asked Kemi Badenoch about that last night, and she said it's evidence that not enough is being done. There's not so much of an urgency on this approach as there was during those 2 weeks of almost constant coverage that we had at the beginning of the year. But Kemi Badenoch has used this opportunity, speaking to GB News, to put forward a set of amendments. The first one is going to be tabled to the Crime and Policing Bill, calling for another vote on a national statutory public inquiry that would compel witnesses to give evidence. Of course, there was a vote on that in January. It was rejected in the Commons because it was part of the Education Bill. Labour said they wouldn't do it because it would wreck their education policy, which Kemi Badenoch took aim at last night. And there are 3 other amendments also put forward. The mandatory release of ethnicity data, aggravating sentencing for being a member of a grooming gang. And finally, this is the 4th one we didn't expect. It sort of appeared out of nowhere. In the interview, she said, also, we're going to strip back human rights protections for those convicted of grooming gang offences so they can be deported. The big problem for the Conservatives on this is they haven't actually got that much credibility because several grooming gang perpetrators hung on for many, many years against deportation, costing the taxpayer hundreds of thousands of pounds while the Conservatives were in office. Towards the end of the interview, and we have a clip we can play you, Kemi Badenoch said that some parties, other than the Tories, are finding this more difficult to deal with. By that, she's almost certainly referring to Labour. So we asked her about that.
I do think some parties are more scared of it than others, and we're not scared, and we're going to keep fighting for the people who deserve justice.
Why do you think Labour are scared of those cultural or ethnicity factors?
That's a question you're going to have to ask them.
OK. No view on that? Is it going to be a voter issue?
I don't know. It's a question you're going to have to ask them.
OK.
What a fascinating response.
Do you believe her? I don't know. I do believe her when she says I don't know.
In her eye.
She did, didn't she? And I think what is being suggested there is that Labour is finding this uncomfortable to engage with because they've already lost so many voters from a Muslim background, particularly in those key seats that they lost to the so-called pro-Gaza independents at the last general election. So there is fear, I think, among those in Labour that Kemi Badenoch is suggesting that this issue does generate more of a division among its traditional voter base. But Kemi Badenoch wouldn't be brought into speaking further on that.
Yes, I do wonder how much of an issue demographics is in some of these Labour seats, that it's one of the reasons why they've failed so far to handle it on a local level, but also, you know, now at the government level, because it has just slipped off the agenda despite all the strong words, hasn't it?
It has, and clearly not a top priority in the Home Office, but that's why reports like this are so important. So thank you very much, Charlie Peters, for coming in and telling us all about it, and to Kemi Badenoch for leaving us that slight bit of, letting us make our own conclusions.
Yes, indeed. We have some more breaking news on that Prince Harry bullying row, apparently. So joining us now is GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Tell us.
Well, the Duke of Sussex has given us a statement, a very strongly worded statement, I hasten to add. It says, from the inception of Centre Barley nearly 20 years ago, Prince Siso and I had a clear goal to support the children and young people in southern Africa in memory of our mothers. What has transpired over the last week has been heartbreaking to witness, especially when such blatant lies hurts those who have invested decades in this shared goal. I suspect there he is referring to the chair's interview over the weekend, or 2 interviews with British media, where he was accused of misogyny and bullying, etc. He goes on to say, no one suffers more than the beneficiaries of Centre Barley itself. On behalf of the former trustees and patrons, we share in the relief that the Charity Commission confirms they will be conducting a robust inquiry. We fully expect it will unveil the truth that collectively forced us to resign. We remain hopeful that this will allow for the charity to be put in the right hands immediately for the sake of the communities we serve. So I think 2 things to say there. It's very much he said, she said when it comes to this boardroom battle row. And the Charity Commission, perhaps I think Prince Harry is saying, you need to give us the exact truth, and that's the truth that we should have. And again, it appears he's subtly asking for the chair to step down while this investigation goes ahead. But from the chair's statement we had, 20 minutes or so, it seems that Sophie Chanduka will not budge.
Blimey. Well, what a meeting of minds. Cameron, what happens then with regard to the timeline here? We've had statements from all the sides. Do we have any indication when this investigation might conclude?
From experience with similar Charity Commission investigation, it's not going to be quick. I reckon at least a couple of months before we get those findings, because they're going to have to go through all the evidence. They're going to have to speak to Prince Harry, other trustees, and, of course, the chair themselves and anybody else involved. And then, obviously, analyse, assess the evidence that they've got and then come up with a conclusion. So it's not going to be, it's basically a long road, and we'll have to wait and see.
Goodness me, how many statements and counter-statements can we expect coming down the line? I imagine quite a few, Cameron.
And complete opposites as well. It's very tit for tat. It's long gone are the days of never complain, never explain.
Yes, very much so. Cameron Walker, thank you very much indeed. A little bit earlier, well, just now, we were talking about the grooming gang scandal. Now, a Labour Party spokesperson has responded to the Conservatives' planned amendments to the Crime and Policing Bill. They've said...
Kemi Badenoch spent almost 2 years in the run-up to the election as Minister for Women and Equalities, and Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, spent the same period as Minister for Policing and Crime. Not once in that time did either of them mention the issue of grooming gangs in any of their speeches in the House of Commons. Not once did they hold a meeting with any external individual or organisation to discuss the issue of grooming gangs. Not one victim, not one expert on sexual abuse, not one local authority, not one local police force. And worst of all, not once did they lift a finger to implement any of the recommendations of Alexis Jay's 7-year national inquiry into child sexual abuse. No wonder they're pretending that the inquiry never happened, when they ignored it so completely after its publication.
It goes on. What we're seeing from Kemi Badenoch and Chris Philp today is an utterly disgraceful, dishonest and hypocritical attempt to make political capital out of an issue they could not have cared less about when they were actually in government with the chance to help the victims of this abuse. They have no shame.
That is the strongest rebuttal I think I have ever heard from the Labour press operation. They are pulling no punches.
Doesn't address what they're doing, though, does it? But if you are in search of some winter sun, some spring sun out of this country, I mean, it's very sunny outside in most of the country, but hey-ho, you could go somewhere else. Here are the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Well, the UK has plenty of sunshine. There is more wet and windy weather to come across parts of Spain and Portugal over the next couple of days. An area of low pressure bringing wet and windy weather in here. Generally fine across the Canaries. Temperature will be rising here. Plenty of sunshine for Corsica and Sardinia, much of northern Italy. 1 or 2 isolated showers in southern Italy. Quite showery over mainland Greece and through parts of Turkey too. A continued possibility of showers here, but some sunny skies for Santorini and warming up a touch in Barcelona.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another dry and sunny day for many of us, but one exception. Through the afternoon and into the evening, we will see some showery rain move up from the southwest. This area of low pressure off the coast of Portugal is going to send a number of weather fronts in. The first one bringing thicker cloud and the odd spot of rain to western England and Wales. The next one bringing some more persistent rain later in the day. But elsewhere, apart from a bit of cloud for Shetland and this keen breeze for the east coast, for most it's a warm and sunny day. Temperatures pegged back on the east coast, single figures in places because of that brisk wind from the North Sea. Inland, though, particularly towards the west, temperatures of the high teens or even low 20s. However, temperatures will be limited later in the afternoon across southwest England because of the arrival of some cloud and some outbreaks of rain, some heavy bursts, particularly for Exeter westwards. Into South Wales as well, that rain will move, but for Northern Ireland, North Wales, northern and central England, as well as for much of Scotland, it's a clear end to the day. Plenty of fine weather. And although it will be much cooler on the east coast, it is also going to be, again, sunny skies for many. Now, the area of rain in the southwest will move into parts of South and mid-Wales overnight, eventually reaching parts of southeast Northern Ireland and central southern England during the early hours, but it's petering out all the while. So this area of cloud covering a larger region by the start of Friday, and as a result, frost-free. And we'll also see frost-free conditions on the east coast because of the brisk breeze, but a touch of frost possible for western Scotland. That's where the best of the sunshine will be on Friday morning, and despite the cloud elsewhere, well, we will see brighter weather emerge into the afternoon, and for most it's another warm and sunny afternoon with even higher temperatures, 23 Celsius possible.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. We're going to take you through the wider tariff context now. We've been banging on about tariffs all day, but what does it actually mean? How does it compare through history? I want to show you the average tariff rate that the United States has charged foreign imports on average over the course of the last 100 years. See this spike here? That was during the Great Depression. It was known as the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. Many economists argue they prolonged the pain and engorged that Great Depression. But after the Second World War, tariffs came down. The amount of tax that Americans charged on their imports, frankly on their consumers, became lower and lower. And this was the era of American supremacy. They took over as the superpower of the world, and these tariffs were low. The amount that Americans had to pay for foreign imports was low. This was Trump's first term. Just zooming in here, a slight uptick, but really, compared to where the tariffs were in the past, even though these tariffs were mainly charged on China and the like, a little bit of an uptick, not a big one. But Trump's second term is something completely different. Let's move to our next slide and saw where these tariffs were going up to. This is before last night. Again, that's the highest level since the Second World War. That was the status until the Rose Garden speech last night. Now look at this next slide. Here we go. After the Rose Garden announcement, the tariff level, on average, across the board, is nearing 30%. That hasn't been seen in the last 100 years of American trade. This is an astonishing rise. Only a few weeks ago, Americans, on average, for foreign imports, were paying around 2.5% tariffs. Now it's near 30%. I mean, it's an astonishing increase. It hasn't been seen before in the last 100 years, and it gives you a scale of the difference between Trump's second term and his first.
So, Tom, very quickly, what is your point?
Everything has become an extraordinarily amount higher in terms of expense. Goods are becoming more expensive. People talk about tariffs as if Donald Trump imposed these tariffs in his last term. This was his last term. This is his second term. It's a different order of magnitude. OK, well, Tom, thank you very much indeed. A little bit of historical context for you on where these tariffs are. Yes, Donald Trump is very much changing the game here. Could it be said that the global picture has changed quite a lot since 1920? But look at that huge rise. I mean, that is a huge rise in tariffs. The implications are yet to be seen. It's astonishing. I spoke a little bit about the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. I mean, these would seem to be a geopolitical disaster in the Great Depression. It's all going to be OK, Tom. I mean, the Smoot-Hawley tariffs were connected to, for example, the greater belligerence of countries like Japan. Japan used to trade a lot with the United States. They slapped on these tariffs. Then they invaded Manchuria. I mean, in some ways, that led to the greater aggression of the Second World War. Tom, you make me laugh. It all connects. It all connects. And all of this huge tariff hike is not a good thing. This is the highest taxes that Americans will have paid on imports for over 100 years. Well, we'll see what happens, won't we? gbnews.com/USA. Get in touch. We've got lots more coming up on today's show, so do not go anywhere. Stick with us.
It's the final week to see how you could spruce up your spring, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not one, but two sought-after designer watches. Make sure you don't miss out, as lines close on the 4th of April. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Thursday, the 3rd of April. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
The morning after, the night before, global stock markets take a hammering as Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs are announced. Our Prime Minister admits the British economy will be hit, despite being one of the lowest impacted countries on that historic list. We're live up and down the country assessing the impact here at home.
We know there has been a lot of investigation, but it has not been anywhere near the scale required in order to get to the root of what's been happening across our country.
Yes, in a GB News exclusive, a push for a harder crackdown on grooming gangs. Kemi Badenoch calls for a second vote on a national public inquiry. Today we're asking, has the scandal been ignored?
And the fate of boys is a defining issue of our time, says the Education Secretary. Yes, Bridget Phillipson calls for more men to become teachers in order to combat toxic behaviours within our schools. But is she...
I think she is right, but as ever, we wait for something to go too far in the other direction before then we realise that actually we need more of a balance. You know, no one was worrying about it for years and years and years as women took over the profession. And now suddenly, oh, some of these boys might need actually a male role model at school. Some of these boys might need a male teacher. Male teachers actually have something to offer
But is the
in
way
the classroom.
to get male teachers back just to ask men to come and be teachers, or is there something
You have to incentivise it somehow.
that is stopping men in the first place? I mean, I don't know. teachers aren't allowed to throw.
Go on, say what you think.
Teachers aren't allowed to throw whiteboard markers at naughty children anymore.
And that's what men want to do, is it?
And I think that would help. I think that would help attract more men.
Well, the problem is that now the reason probably why men don't want to go into the profession is because it's too female-dominated.
Oh, right. And then it becomes a vicious cycle.
And then it becomes a vicious cycle. Whereas if they'd probably been a bit more, you know, proactive in trying to get an equal balance before, then maybe we wouldn't be in this position.
Do you see what I mean about schools being a bit more softly
Oh,
than
yeah,
they used to?
but that's probably because there are more women.
Right.
I don't mean to be sexist. There are a lot of tough women out there.
Of course there are.
Of course there are. A lot of tough female women who don't take any rubbish or any nonsense from their students. Absolutely. My mother was a fantastic teacher and she was brilliant with boys as well. But I do worry, yes, if there's too much of a softly approach to some of these schools.
But is that a regulatory environment thing? And is the Education Secretary going to even mention that, other than saying, please, more men, please come be teachers, rather than sort of addressing actually how schools behave or the culture or the regulatory structure?
And I do think it has been all about girls for a long time. And now they're suddenly realising that there's quite a lot of lost boys out there who might need a helping hand as well. gbnews.com/your say. Get in touch with that one. Do you think more men need to go into the field? Why do you reckon they're not going into teaching? And also, on those tariffs, are you concerned about the British economy, the impact on all of us, prices, etc., etc.? Or do you think that Donald Trump is doing the right thing by his country? Let us know. gbnews.com/your say. That's after your headlines with Tatiana.
Emily, thank you and good afternoon. The top stories. London's FTSE 100 index dropped sharply on opening, falling by 1.4% in the first few minutes of trading after the US president unveiled sweeping new tariffs on US imports. The Prime Minister's spoken to business leaders this morning, while the Trade Secretary is looking to calm markets after Donald Trump imposed a 10% tariff on US imports of UK goods. The Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, says this morning he's working to get the 10% US tariffs reversed, rather than securing an economic deal to offset them. A 25% tariffs also come into effect today in the UK on all foreign cars imported to the US, a move which experts fear could cost 25,000 jobs in the British car industry. President Trump says the EU's rate will be 20%. President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has vowed a unified response. And China has demanded that Trump revoke the tariffs and vowed countermeasures, whilst other world leaders have voiced concerns of an escalating trade war. The Prime Minister told business chiefs in Downing Street that clearly there will be an economic impact, but the government would respond with cool and calm heads.
But I want to be crystal clear. We are prepared. Indeed, one of the great strengths of this nation is our ability to keep a cool head. I said that in my first speech as Prime Minister, and that is how I govern. Nobody wins in a trade war. That is not in our national interest. We have a fair and balanced trade relationship with the US. Negotiations on an economic prosperity deal, one that strengthens our existing trading relationship. They continue, and we will fight for the best deal for Britain.
The Business Secretary told the Commons this afternoon the UK only being hit by 10% import taxes by the US has vindicated the government's approach to talks with the United States.
We are, of course, disappointed by the increase in tariffs on the UK and on other countries around the world. The impact will be felt amongst all trading nations. But I would like to update the House on how the UK can navigate these turbulent times, acting in our national interest and for the benefit of all our industries. On everything from defence, economic security, financial services, machinery, tech and regulation, there are clear synergies between the US and UK markets. And this is reflected in the fair and balanced trading relationship that already exists between our two countries. I can confirm to the House that those talks are ongoing and will remain so. It is this government's view that a deal is not just possible, it is favourable to both countries.
Elsewhere, the Duke of Sussex said the fallout of his resignation as patron of Centre Ballet has been heartbreaking to witness, and that he hoped the Charity Commission would unveil the truth that collectively forced us to resign. His comments come after the watchdog escalated its investigations into concerns raised about the charity amid a boardroom battle with the organisation. The Duke of Sussex also says he's relieved the regulator has opened a case hitting out at, quote, blatant lies. The Charity Commission opened a compliance case into Centre Ballet a week after it emerged Harry had quit as patron. Last week, it emerged that several trustees had left the charity in a dispute with its chairwoman, Sophie Chanduka, having requested her resignation. Ms Chanduka issued a statement in which she alleged there had been poor governance, weak executive management, abuse of power, bullying, harassment and misogyny. Sir Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner have launched Labour's local election campaign today, promising to bring change to Britain ahead of its first major test at the ballot box since entering office. Labour's focusing its opening pitch to voters on healthcare, pointing to swift action taken by the government to end planned doctor strikes by offering an improved pay rise. The party says the negotiation of a deal early on has helped spare disruption to hundreds of thousands of appointments. The party is basing that claim on NHS data suggesting 507,000 cancellations occurred between July 2023 and last March during periods of industrial action under the last government.
We've cut waiting lists by 200,000. At the election 9 months ago, we promised 2 million extra NHS appointments in the first year of a Labour government, and we delivered that in 7 months. That's a promise made and a promise delivered. Because this government got around the table, because we ended the strikes within 4 weeks, because we put doctors back on the front line, not the picket line, we saved 500,000 NHS appointments. That's the change that Labour makes. Fuel duty, cut. That's the change that Labour makes. Wages rising faster than prices. That's the change that Labour makes.
A 7-year-old boy who was killed in a house explosion caused by criminals using 100 gas canisters to make cannabis gummy sweets in the flat below. 33-year-old Rhys Galbraith has admitted the manslaughter of Archie York and Galbraith's friend Jason J. Laws, 35, who died in the blast in Newcastle in the early hours of October 16th. The blast wrecked the street, rendered families homeless and led to a major emergency services response. Galbraith also admitted possessing and supplying cannabis between November 2023 and October last year. And some breaking news. The Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander said she has approved Luton Airport's expansion plan, despite the Planning Inspectorate recommending she reject it over environmental concerns. More on that as soon as we get it. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 9 minutes past 2. Now, British produce being imported into the US will be hit by a 10% tariff from the 5th of April.
The EU, on the other hand, is going to receive a 20% tariff.
United Kingdom 10%, and we'll go 10%. So we'll do the same thing. You know, you think of the European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%. We're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half.
Well, the Prime Minister hit back this morning, assuring business chiefs that the government would respond with cool and calm heads, but acknowledging the economic impact.
Yes, well, shall we head back to Downing Street and join our political editor, Christopher Hope, with the very latest. Christopher, so behind the scenes, where do you think the government is going on this one? Obviously, they'll be very concerned about the potential economic impact, particularly on certain industries. Where do you think they're going to go?
I think we can't say right now, frankly, Emily. I think they are just doing a keep calm and carry on approach to dealing with this. We're hearing the same language from the European Union. There's a consultation being launched asking companies to pitch in. How would you deal with 10% tariffs on your business? And of course, car makers are a different case altogether, 25% on exports to America. See where that takes them. They hold the right to have to take action while that consultation is going on. That comes back on May the 1st, and after that there might be some more action. But we'll wait and see. I think they aren't really sure. They're trying to calibrate a reaction to avoid inflaming relations with Donald Trump and try to understand where does that 10% come from. In the lobby briefing earlier, we asked, do you recognise this 10% tariff on US goods? Is that a number you recognise? Because we understand that the business department thinks it might be more like 4%. So where does 10% come from? The idea of US goods being given a 10% tariff, well, frankly, wasn't discussed in politics until last night when it was raised by the USA. So it might well be that we're trying to say to America, you know, where is that 10% come from? Is that half VAT? And VAT is a national sales tax. You have local sales taxes in America. The EU has sales taxes. Is that what you're talking about? Or are there elements of how do you get to 10%? That isn't really very clear, I think, for the UK government. And they wouldn't say in the briefing just now whether they supported it or not. Jonathan Reynolds is leading the way. He's the business secretary, and you saw Keir Starmer earlier. But worried faces, concerned faces, because according to the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, a 10% tariff applied across the UK for the next 2 years will wipe out all of the 0.5% growth we heard from the Treasury last week. So big concerns here.
Yeah, and there's been a bit of a debate, hasn't there, over whether the fact we have been given only 10% in tariffs, the lowest of any country, although there are other countries with 10% as well, that this is a win for the Labour government, that this is down to various negotiations that have been ongoing, and it's a Labour win. Others have said it absolutely isn't.
Yes, you could say that. You could also say it's a Brexit dividend. And if I asked that question in Downing Street just now, and they refused to go back and relitigate the Brexit battles from 9 years ago. But yeah, that's what it looks like. It's the advantage of being outside the European Union. And I've long wondered why the building behind me doesn't just embrace the status of being outside the European Union, own the sovereignty, own the right and the fact that the decisions are made now by elected politicians, not by officials in Brussels. And that's why Brexit matters for so much. It empowers anyone in power in this country to do more than they could do when they're hiding behind the EU's apron strings. I've got to also, by the way, while I'm on, talk to you briefly about Birmingham. Fascinating, I think, that now we've got a minister in Angela Rayner's department going to Birmingham to bang heads together. They want an immediate solution to the issue of the bin crisis in Birmingham, the rats. It is horrific what's happening there. Were that to be in London, imagine that the outcry and anger, frankly, from the Westminster elite, the Whitehall machine. Because in Birmingham, it's kind of forgotten. That is outrageous, and that's why we're covering it so much on GB News. Jim McMullen, who's a junior minister in Angela Rayner's department, he's now meeting with senior figures today. Of course, overnight, we've seen Unite's leader, Sharon Graham. She has written to Angela Rayner, who's the local government secretary, to call for action.
Yeah, and it's all been going on since the 11th of March. One could say, why has it taken so long for Angela Rayner to get involved? But Christopher Hope, thank you very much indeed for now.
Well, what do these tariffs mean for us here in the UK? And what do you make of it at home? Let's cross to our Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire, who's been asking that exact question. Tony.
Hello, good afternoon. Well, you know, a sunny day here in Glasgow and a sunny outlook is something that people, the optimists of certainly Scotland, are hoping for. Of course, big concerns across many of our industries, including Scottish salmon and our Scotch whisky. But across the UK, there's a bigger conversation about these tariffs. The who, what, where and when and why is certainly filling up a lot of people's minds as to just how much they're going to be hit by these tariffs on imports into the United States. And we've heard here from people in Glasgow the general confusion over why these are coming in and just how far the effects of them will be felt in day-to-day lives. But across the country, you know, the concerns are certainly echoed elsewhere in the UK. And our good friend Anna Riley has been speaking to people in Yorkshire today about their concerns and what these tariffs will mean for them.
What is confusing me about this tariff is they're saying it's a blanket ban of 10%, which I understand, and then they suddenly say, but for cars it's 25%. So it's not a blanket ban. And that's what is confusing for me.
Yeah, so would you say you understood what a tariff was? How would you describe one?
Something they're putting on to things, and hopefully it's not going to hurt normal people, just working class people.
And would you know what it meant by a reciprocal tariff?
Yes, well, I should think that means we do the same sort of thing.
And if you could ask an expert a bit more about these tariffs and how they work, what would you ask them?
Are they necessary? Or what is the reason for doing it?
I think that what he's done is to try to change the status quo globally. I think for too long and America particularly, and us, and Europe, have been bombarded with a lot of cheap imports from China, which has affected our manufacturing. So we're not manufacturing like we used to, and I think this is Trump's aim. Whether it works or not, we'll wait and see.
There you go. A lot of people are certainly keen to talk to experts about what this will mean to them. You know, and if I could make my own submission, what will the long-term effects be on our Scottish industry of our whisky, our beloved Scotch whisky industry? That is the big question up here at the very least.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one of the areas that's probably going to be hit the most, actually. Tony Maguire, thank you very much from a very sunny and bustling Glasgow. I can see behind you. Shall we speak to the Labour MP for Dover and Deal, Mike Tapp, on all of this? Mike, what do you reckon? 10% tariffs for us, 20% for the European Union. Have we seen a benefit there from being outside the European Union?
I think it's, you know, any tariff isn't ideal, and we've made that really clear. But I think the statesman-like approach that we've seen from the Prime Minister in his dealings with the American administration and that historic special relationship that we have with the United States has certainly been of assistance. But of course, we're in the middle of trade talks now, and hopefully we'll be able to deliver.
Mike, you didn't really answer my question. Mike, you didn't answer my question. Is this a Brexit dividend? What do you think your constituents would say?
I don't know if it's a Brexit dividend. It wasn't on the side of the bus. But look, I'm not particularly fussed by that. Brexit's long gone, and it's about making sure we've got relationships with Europe and with the United States, which we'll continue to pursue.
So, looking at this trade negotiation that is ongoing, what does the government actually want to achieve out of it? I mean, Donald Trump said yesterday that there is now a baseline 10% tariff. Are we going to break that baseline? Are we actually going to return to a situation where some of our industries, much of the pharmaceuticals industry, for example, that enjoyed zero tariffs with the United States until yesterday's announcement, are we going to return to that status quo ante, or is it going to be somewhere in between?
I'd imagine that the aim of the government is to see those tariffs go. Whether that's achievable or not is difficult to say. And look, what we won't see from the government over the coming weeks and months is a sort of running commentary of those negotiations, because it is a delicate process and it's diplomacy, really. And we've seen how competent this government is on the diplomatic front. So I'm confident that we'll deliver what's in the national interest.
Mike, have we seen actually how competent this government is on the diplomacy front? Because I've been looking at the formula that the administration in the United States have used to calculate the tariffs they charge on other countries. And it seems that, well, potentially we just fit along that formula, that there's been no great negotiation achieving this 10% tariff. We've got this 10% tariff because we don't have a big trade deficit with the United States. It seems what they've done in order to calculate their tariffs is take a trade deficit in goods, divide that by the country's exports to the United States, turn that into a percentage and halve it. That's how they've turned up with these this 20% for the European Union and higher for China and all the rest of it. I mean, has there really been any negotiation that's actually affected their thinking?
It's difficult to say, having not been party to the negotiations, but we've got to look at the fact that it is the lowest tariff across the world, and that is good and that is encouraging. But of course, you know, we don't want to see these tariffs, and I have faith in Keir Starmer and this government to work hard in the national interest to get that deal that will benefit us here.
Yeah, it's not great that we're on the same track as Afghanistan and Chile and Peru. But, Mike, I want to turn our attention to something else. Why has it taken so long for Angela Rayner to get involved with what's happening in Birmingham with all of these bins? The union representing these bin workers has been on strike now since March the 11th, so that's a number of weeks now. And it's just getting pretty grim for people in our second biggest city. Why is she only getting involved now?
Yeah, I mean, look, Birmingham's a long way from Dover. So my knowledge
you must care, though, Mike. I care.
Of course I care. But the ins and outs of the council functions are beyond my knowledge, but it is good to see that the government and ministers are stepping in to ensure that is cleared, because it does need to be cleared.
Shall we return to trade for a second then? Because one of the first actions of this government was to fire the previous government's trade negotiator, chief trade negotiator, Crawford Faulkner. He had been conducting a huge amount of these negotiations with the previous Trump regime. He knew the ins and outs of the trade relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States. Could getting rid of him have been a mistake, given these negotiations need to start from scratch almost? These relationships need to be rebuilt from scratch?
No, I don't think so. Look, the important thing is that we've got competent diplomats working in this area. And, of course, we've got Mr Mandelson out in the United States as well, who you may not like, but he is a very competent politician. And, look, Keir Starmer is leading as a statesman on the global stage. And we're accepting what Donald Trump is saying, for example, around Europe relying on the United States too much for defence. We've raised our defence spending 2.5%, things that Donald Trump was calling for before he was president, that were ignored by the previous administration and that we have put into play. So there is that respect there and that deep relationship, which is historic with Mr Trump. Of course, he's going to be over on a state visit in due course too. So I'm confident that with the relationship we've built and the competent diplomats that are working on this, we will deliver. But unfortunately for news, there won't be that running commentary, because there is a skill to diplomacy and negotiations that actually your cards need to be kept quite close to your chest.
Yes, Mandelson is learning it quite quickly, isn't he? Did an about turn on his view on Donald Trump, didn't he? Mike Tapp, thank you very much indeed, Labour MP for Dover and Deal.
Well, if you are feeling worried about the financial situation of the country, worried about these taxes and these tariffs making you a little bit less financially secure, here's a way to shore yourself up. Why don't you enter our massive spring giveaway? £17,777 in tax-free cash and tariff-free cash could be won by you. Here's the details.
Lines close tomorrow and your chance to win big this spring, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag and not one, but two sought-after designer watches, so you can style it out this spring. Hurry, lines close at 6 p.m. tomorrow. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
The Daily Mail.
white glamour model Martina Big, 36, who, quote, identifies as black, quote, after having tanning... I can't do it. Who identifies as black, quote, after having tanning injections, and this is the kicker at the end of it, announces plan to move to Africa. Yeah. There's so much to unpack here. This is a woman called Martina Big, who is well named.
That's her birth name.
That is her birth name, but also the description of her chest. She's spent quite a lot of money getting the largest breasts in Europe. She now, however, has been injecting herself with some kind of pigment or colouring system to turn her from white to black.
Let's have a look. So this is before.
This is before, and then it's quite a shocking shift here. She's been to Kenya to go and meet the Masai Mara. They've christened her. They've given her a baptism, and so she's now believing that she is Kenyan, and she's going over to Kenya. So what is weird about this is it's like, obviously the...
Tell us what's weird about it.
Well, what is weird about it? There's obviously the initial thought of like, that's really inappropriate. This is black-facing, but not even in a temporary way. Yeah. But then hang on, she wants to be living her true life. So maybe she should be. This is where it's all got tied up in itself. Steve used to be a black woman before to the business. We go to our correspondent.
What's the difference in blackface here and what gender-critical women would call women face, which they would say that's how they address men, biological men, now saying that they're women. They would say it's the same, like Dylan Mulvaney, who is, as far as I know, still an intact male, but sort of prancing around and sort of being this kind of...
like a girl.
Yeah, like oh, I'm a girl and that's very offensive to women.
In fact, this woman actually has a greater claim because evolutionarily, she will have black ancestors.
Of course, we all do.
Yeah, so...
And, according to her, she will, and I'm not a doctor, but she will have black children.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 28 minutes past 2. Now, almost 8 years on from the Manchester Arena terrorist attack, the mother of one of those 22 victims killed that day has today seen her campaign Strengthen Britain's Terrorist Laws receive royal assent.
Yes, Fegan Murray, mother to Martin Hett, has worked for years to push Martin's law through Parliament, and now it's been passed, it's been given royal assent and will be enforced in venues in the UK, taking steps to reduce the risk of a terror attack.
Now, our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper sat down to find out more.
His death now has meaning because of the legislation. Maybe he had to die in order for his mum to just do this, for others to be saved.
It feels like this has been a very long time coming. 8 years in May since the attack, and you have campaigned and campaigned and campaigned. You did your walk to Downing Street last year. You've put so much into this. How does it feel that you are finally here?
It's really hard to let it sink in because, as you said, it's been so long. And year after year, I used to think this is the year it's going to happen. This will happen this year. And every year it was a disappointment. And to reach this point now, I have to pinch myself to get actually that it's true and it's happened.
Do you believe that if Martin's Law or some form of it existed back in 2017, do you think that Martin would still be here now?
Yeah, most likely, because, you know, staff would have been more vigilant, the general public would have been more aware of their surroundings. Security measures would have probably been better, yeah. Maybe that sounds arrogant. I'll feel proud because I feel that all that hard work has been worthwhile, and I know that people at that venue, if that happens, when that happens, will be safer.
When you first walk into one of these venues who will have implemented new measures as a result of Martin's Law, how do you think that's going to feel? Do you think you'll feel some kind of relief?
One of the things I realised very early on in the campaign is that I can't put too much emotion into it, because I needed the energy, internal energy and drive to push the legislation forward. I had to shelve my grief for Martin, so I haven't even properly grieved for him. And actually, in April, during this month, I'm actually starting therapy and finally dealing with the emotional side of everything. I may not like that he died, and I feel really bereft and have a Martin-shaped hole in my soul, and that'll be there forever. But I just feel it was his time to go, and maybe his death now has meaning because of the legislation. Maybe he had to die in order for his mum to just do this.
Well, we're delighted to say that joining us now is the mother of Martin Hett, Figan Murray, live from just outside Parliament. Figan, you must be very happy that today that your long campaign has come to fruition. But there are also many businesses up and down the country, many venues, that are worried about the implication of this new regulation that will be placed upon them.
Yes, I know there have been fears around that, but what I can say to that is the legislation has gone through extensive debate in both houses over and over again. We didn't just have one public consultation, we had a second one just to make sure that everybody is sort of understanding what's needed. And therefore I feel actually that some of these fears are not really founded on something that people should worry about too much.
So what exactly are venues going to have to implement then?
Well, I think the smaller venues under the standard tier, any venue between 200 and 799 people, what they need to do is they need to be actually prepared to know what to do. Something as simple and cost-free as lockdown, as evacuation, hiding somewhere inside if they can't hide inside, how to evacuate safely, and communicate with the outside authorities. A lot of that is cost-free or very low cost. And what people can do in addition, if they want to, is do free of charge training that's online given by the government. And the bigger venues, they may have to invest in a little bit, but again, it's something they should be doing anyway.
Yes, that investment has been a worry, because the impact assessment that the government drew up for this policy said it would be a net cost of £2.1 billion. I mean, that's a huge amount of money.
Yeah, but as I said, as far as I'm concerned, the government has extensively done consultations, both for both tiers, but also in addition to that, because of the fears you mentioned earlier, they did a second public consultation asking any businesses who are concerned to chip in with that public consultation, which they have done. And the public consultation number 2 was purely for the smaller venues. So it has been scrutinised very carefully, and therefore I don't think that the issue around cost and money should be an issue in terms of keeping people safe. I mean, you know, if you pay your money and go to a concert, you should in the very least be kept safe.
And Figan, you've been, must have been through hell and back, losing your son in such an awful circumstance. How do you feel Britain is, in general, prepared for radicalisation and extremism and these awful types of terror attacks? Do you think, besides from this particular law, do you feel like things are getting safer for people in that respect, or less so?
I think obviously radicalisation is an issue. not just in this country but worldwide, because I keep a close eye on it since I studied terrorism. It's a special interest of mine, so I keep a close eye on it. And I also go to schools. I've seen up to 30,000 young people so far, talking to them about the dangers of online radicalization, how they can detect people who try and recruit them online, and that is for any ideology. It's not a particular ideology. Dangers are there everywhere, and young people need to be aware of how to keep themselves safe.
OK. Well, Figen Murray, thank you so much for speaking to us. A big day for you, of course, there outside Parliament, mother of Martin Hett, of course. Appreciate your time.
Well, in the last few minutes, the New York Stock Exchange rung its opening bells to, of course, start the day's trading. Shall we have a listen?
Well, lots of cheering people there, but what will the stocks look like? Will they be going up or down in response to the astonishing new levels of tariffs announced by Donald Trump? It hasn't been pretty so far, but we'll bring you the numbers. Of course, the United States, the New York Stock Exchange just opening now in the last few minutes. Of course, trading has been going on for longer here in London. Let's have a look at the FTSE 100 back in Blighty. Oof! And it's at 8,941 points, a sharp drop there, down in the red over the course of the last day, indeed the last week too. This has been a pretty tough time for global stocks.
OK, well, there you go, bringing you the very latest from the stock markets. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. We'll bring you more reaction on that one. And also, the Duke of Sussex says the charity resignation fallout, this is his resignation, has been heartbreaking to witness. What exactly is going on there?
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. In Tyne and Wear, the A692 is closed in both directions southwest of Gateshead after an accident. The M5 in the West Midlands is closed northbound from Junction 3 at Halesowen to 2 at Albury for an investigation. There are queues from Junction 4 at Bromsgrove. Southbound's reopened, but still queuing back to the M6. In Nottinghamshire, the A60 is closed southbound along Mansfield Road at Ravenshead after an accident. In Wiltshire, the A342 is closed each way between Irchfront and Rushall after an accident. And Eurotunnel reporting a wait now of up to 2 hours for passengers at Folkestone. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's at the Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain, and good morning, America. Yes, the New York Stock Exchange has opened, and it's down by 2.6% already in the first few minutes of trading. We can see live numbers on our screens right now. There's slight recovery going on here, but certainly a significant drop, down over 2.5%. This is, of course, the Dow Jones Industrial Average Index. This is looking at the biggest companies in the United States. They are taking a hit this morning, the first time that the markets have had an opportunity to really assess what on earth Donald Trump announced last night.
Yeah, and some of the big multinational companies have taken a hit, as you might expect. Nike and Apple, they've dropped 11% and 8% respectively. Other companies, including tech, Tesla, down 3.5%. We know that they've been struggling a little over the last few months. Gap has plunged 15%, this according to CNBC, the news network over in the United States. So, yes, as you can imagine, as was predicted, there has been a bit of a hit to the stocks. The S&P 500 has dropped 3.4%, which apparently is one of the worst days, or puts it on track for one of the worst days since 2022.
So over the course of the time that we've been looking at these live numbers, they seem to have been darting around between around minus 2.5% and minus 2.6%. Clearly, this is a relatively stable level of depreciation in the value of these stocks. But just to put it in political context, the stock market rallied during Donald Trump's first term. It meant that a lot of people who perhaps didn't quite like Donald Trump's brash attitude or the lack of decorum, as some might see it, could be put aside, because ultimately America became richer. People saw their stock holdings soar and continued to vote for Donald Trump. And yet this time, it seems like the stocks are reacting in a very different way to Trump 2.0. He's imposed so many... We're down to 2.71, minus 2.71 now, minus 2.72. Stocks reacting in such a worse way to Donald Trump's second term than they did to his first term. I mean, ultimately, what was announced last night was a massive tax hike on the American people. In his first term, across the board, Donald Trump cut taxes. In his second term, he's raising tariffs, raising taxes, and look at that. It's going even worse as we're speaking, closer to minus 2.7 now.
Of course, this is the immediate reaction to what we heard last night. It may well be that things change a little in the forthcoming weeks, months, years. We shall see. Who knows, has a crystal ball. But yes, down, down, down today as the markets open, as Wall Street opens in New York.
And this is what the Trump administration has been trying to say, that ultimately there needs to be a down before there's an up, that it will cost people money to deliver this industrial transition that they want to see. But ultimately, I mean, stocks aren't a static index. Stocks are a forward-looking index. People bet on the value that they think companies will have in the future. So I'm not sure that the logic of the Trump administration saying, oh, stocks might be down now, but that's because we're waiting for this big rally in the future. Well, then why are people selling? Why is the market selling American companies right now, losing faith in companies that are losing value? Why are they doing that when they're thinking about where the companies will be in the future, not just in the next 5 minutes, but in the next 5 years?
OK, well, for those who have just joined us and are staring at this black screen with lots of figures, yes, the stock market in New York has opened following Trump's big speech last night, where he announced a swathe of tariffs. Yes, Britain being hit with a 10% tariff, the EU with 20%, China with much more, I believe 34% or something thereabouts. Lots of other countries as well hit with tariffs. Here is the reaction from the markets as they open up this morning. We'll bring you more analysis, of course.
Well, it's not pretty across the board, but if you want to travel to somewhere that is pretty, well, why don't you have a look at those European holiday destinations? Here's the travel weather.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Well, the UK has plenty of sunshine. There is more wet and windy weather to come across parts of Spain and Portugal over the next couple of days. An area of low pressure bringing wet and windy weather in here. Generally fine across the Canaries. Temperature will be rising here. Plenty of sunshine for Corsica and Sardinia, much of northern Italy. 1 or 2 isolated showers in southern Italy. Quite showery over mainland Greece and through parts of Turkey too. A continued possibility of showers here, but some sunny skies for Santorini and warming up a touch in Barcelona.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another dry and sunny day for many of us, but one exception. Through the afternoon and into the evening, we will see some showery rain move up from the southwest. This area of low pressure off the coast of Portugal is going to send a number of weather fronts in. The first one bringing thicker cloud and the odd spot of rain to western England and Wales. The next one bringing some more persistent rain later in the day. But elsewhere, apart from a bit of cloud for Shetland and this keen breeze for the east coast, for most it's a warm and sunny day. Temperatures pegged back on the east coast, single figures in places because of that brisk wind from the North Sea. Inland, though, particularly towards the west, temperatures of the high teens or even low 20s. However, temperatures will be limited later in the afternoon across southwest England because of the arrival of some cloud and some outbreaks of rain, some heavy bursts, particularly for Exeter westwards. Into South Wales as well, that rain will move, but for Northern Ireland, North Wales, northern and central England, as well as for much of Scotland, it's a clear end to the day. Plenty of fine weather. And although it will be much cooler on the east coast, it is also going to be, again, sunny skies for many. Now, the area of rain in the southwest will move into parts of South and Mid Wales overnight, eventually reaching parts of southeast Northern Ireland and central southern England during the early hours, but it's petering out all the while. So this area of cloud covering a larger region by the start of Friday, and as a result, frost-free. And we'll also see frost-free conditions on the east coast because of the brisk breeze, but a touch of frost possible for western Scotland. That's where the best of the sunshine will be on Friday morning, and despite the cloud elsewhere, well, we will see brighter weather emerge into the afternoon. And for most, it's another warm and sunny afternoon with even higher temperatures, 23 Celsius possible.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 10 minutes to 3 o'clock, and the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, is calling for more male teachers to provide positive role models in the classroom and help boys reject toxic online influences.
Comes amid a growing crisis, apparently, amongst young boys and the rise of so-called incel culture, which everyone seems to be commenting was highlighted in the recent Netflix series Adolescence.
Yeah, you can't avoid that.
You can't avoid it. out there, you know, banging off pots and pans for adolescents at 8 o'clock tonight.
I'm sure that we're all going to have our mandatory adolescence sort of watching. There's Adolescence Day coming up, I'm sure. It's a bit like Earth Day. You turn off all your lights and you have to watch Adolescence.
I wouldn't be surprised. I genuinely wouldn't be surprised.
Well, joining us now is the Executive Head Teacher at St Thomas the Apostle and Head Teacher at Sacred Heart, Serge Safai. Serge, thanks so much for joining us.
That's all right.
Why is it that there are so few male teachers relative to female teachers?
I don't know. It's been the case for a while. But where do we get our politicians from, for goodness sake? As a head teacher, I want to employ good teachers. I don't care if they're male or female. A good teacher will impart discipline and give good messages. You know, so I don't know where these people get the ideas that this is some kind of, you know, cure for boys being naughty and doing bad things. There's a lot more other things that I could bring to the party that need to be addressed rather than simply, you know, let's make more teachers male. It's daft. It would be nice to get a balance, but this is just, you know, another deflection, if you want my opinion.
Well, yeah, fair enough, but I don't know, I instinctively think it's a problem if there aren't, you know, enough male teachers, because surely male teachers understand boys better than a female teacher can, just inherently by being of the same gender and sex. So, you know, is there not an issue there?
Well, I think you've got a bit of a point. It would be nice to have a balance, but give me, again, I just repeat, I want a good teacher. I don't want necessarily, and never mind that question. So she says we need more male teachers. And how does she propose to sort that out then? You know, is she going to start paying male teachers more? I'm sure you'd love that, wouldn't you, Ellie? So, you know, it's not going to happen.
I wouldn't mind if there's a drought.
I tell you, it's not the problem. And if you want some male role models, you know, let's be a little bit controversial and let's talk about these single-parent families, which are largely run by mums.
Yeah.
And where are the men here? Where are their responsibilities towards their sons? And also the fact that I've had too many experiences of not only are they absent, they don't actually contribute financially. And no one's talking about that very much.
That is such a good point. Why on earth are we talking about schools as if teachers who should be teaching people? Why should they be the social workers or the emotional support individuals in a child's life? Surely that should come from family first. Parents, extended family, wherever that male role model could be found. Are we thinking too much of schools as sort of holistic childcare rather than educational facilities?
It's been going on for decades in terms of we can't sort out the real problem, so let's look at schools, shall we? You know, schools are supposed to teach, great role models, so be it, but we need to be teaching. The fact that we bring compensatory factors towards helping society's problems, you know, that's always a bonus. But I'm afraid adults, listen, I'm an old man, so I've just seen that adults in the main, we've long abdicated our responsibility in bringing up children properly.
Schools are supposed to...
It's about time we started to look at how we bring them up. Clear boundaries, no more this trendy-wendy nonsense. You know, boys especially like to know where they stand. Let's have clear boundaries and let's teach them the right way to behave from a very early age.
Serge, will you be showing? Sorry, we're running out of time. Will you be showing all your? Will you be showing all your students this adolescent series?
For God's sake!
Pardon?
It's entertainment, okay? If you want to do education properly, do the research. It's an entertainment program. But now we've got the Prime Minister saying, "Oh yeah, it'll make a bloody good lesson." Sorry, but it's madness. I'm sure it's very entertaining, and you two love it. I mean, you were taking the mickey a little bit a while ago. But
OK, Serge Safai, thanks so much for joining us. I'm afraid we have run to time there, but really good to talk to you.
You won't be showing it then.
No, did not hold back. My goodness me. Well, thanks indeed.
Good point, eh?
Thanks for watching Good Afternoon Britain. It's the one and only Martin Daubney up next. Over to you, Martin.
Well, they had 4 years to do a trade deal after Brexit. They completely messed it up. Today, Britain could be at the front of the queue as a free, independent nation after Trump's tariff. They didn't do that, and now we're in the mud like the rest of them. The political classes are to blame, but at least we have, hey, a Brexit bonus. Join me after the break, but first, here is your weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's turning into a very different day for parts of Wales and the southwest, with outbreaks of rain turning up, dry elsewhere and more warm sunshine for many as high pressure continues to dominate the weather. That's sitting to the north. We've got this easterly breeze, but we've also got a number of weather fronts moving up from the southwest. Hence the increase in cloud and outbreaks of rain across southwest England into South Wales and then central southern England, eventually Northern Ireland overnight. This cloudier zone across southwestern parts means that it isn't going to be a frosty start to Friday, but it will be a cloudier start with some showers around. Towards the north and the east, it's clear